Okay, good evening everybody. Welcome to this evening's meeting. Thank you. The Mayor is unfortunately unwell and is having to go home, so we wish him well for a speedy recovery. Yes. There will be a break this evening, so we will be taking that after the key discussion, a short break. Item 11 will be brought forward to be taken directly after item 7. Announcements by the Chief Executive.
I have none.
None? Okay. Item 2, apologies for absence. Are there any apologies for absence? Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. We've had apologies from Councillor David Hall, Councillor Richard Smith, Councillor Kath Taylor and Councillor Bivleys Hamilton. We also have 3 members who are on the way but haven't got here yet due to traffic. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sokal.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. As you already announced, apology from Mayor Councillor Masood Ahmed. That's my party member, that's why. Yeah, thank you. Apology from Fran Perry. Apology from Councillor Sarba, Councillor Darren O'Donovan, and Councillor Graham Turner. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Marchington.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Apologies from Councillor Alison Munro and Councillor Kath Pinnock.
Councillor Cooper.
Sue Lee Richards.
Are there any other apologies? And there's also apologies from Councillor Warner. Item 3, minutes of the previous meeting. I move that the minutes of the meeting of the Council held on 9th November 2022 be approved as a correct record. Is that seconded? Thank you, Councillor Sokal. I was very respectful, Councillor Firth, when you were in this position. Now you... can we please vote by show of hands? Mr. Carey, thank you. Item 4, declarations of interest. Members who have any disclosable pecuniary interests which will prevent them from being discussed or voting on any item should disclose the interests now. Are there any interests to declare? Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. I do apologise. It's actually an amendment to the minutes. Now, if you look at, just let me find the page, page 3 of our papers, I think whoever wrote the minutes was being a bit presumptive. The question from Sajid Hussain. Sajid isn't yet a councillor, though does hope to become one in Dewsbury West in May. So we might want to just note the minutes accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Declarations of interest. If there are any declarations to declare. No? Okay. Item 5, petitions from members of the Council. Are there any petitions? Councillor Davis.
Deputy Mayor, I have a petition here with over 1,680 signatures regarding the Tulsa Museum. The sheer number of signatures shows how important the museum is to people and what a big part the Tulsa Museum plays in their memories, their family histories and their sense of heritage. The wealth of comments people have made and taken time to make shows the depth of feeling associated with the museum. Comments such as, it's part of my history, it's part of my family's history, it's our heritage. I could go on, but I'll pass them in with the petition. On the 14th of November, the Heritage Strategy was published, seeking to define and describe the heritage of Kirklees. It is already here in the Tolson. Yet at the same time, it was announced in a meeting that the collections from the Tolson would be moved, effectively closing it as a museum. This petition demonstrates that people love this museum as it is and they want more from it where it is. Please will the Council reconsider decisions to keep the Tolson collection in the Tolson Museum where they belong. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Are there any further petitions? No. In accordance with Council Procedure Rule 9.3, I direct that the subject matter of the petition be referred to the appropriate Service Director for investigation. Item 6, deputations and petitions from members of the public. First one. Okay, can I please invite Clem Bacon to please come forward and present their deputation. Welcome to the meeting. You have 5 minutes to present your deputation to the Council.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I wanted to make a comment on the Climate Change Action Plan that I've been reading from the minutes, from the agenda of your meeting. And having read through the draft of the CCAP and the associated documents, my overriding impression is that the Council lacks the passion, leadership and determination required to meet the demands of the climate crisis. The action plan lacks the necessary urgency to ensure the objectives are made in the timescale required. Some indicators of the lack of urgency are as follows. Firstly, as at September 2021, more than a year ago, KMC had not published their CCAP, whereas 80% of the 205 councils in England had achieved this, including, incidentally, the other constituent councils in the West Yorkshire Combined Authority. Why have we been so tardy? Secondly, the outcome from the COP27 highlights that globally and locally we are falling behind target emission targets, which demonstrates the need for greater urgency. The declared intention to provide leadership within the Council and beyond is not demonstrated by action to date. The Council draft CCAP is very comprehensive and thorough. However, tangible progress is seriously lagging behind the policy ambition and needs to catch up. There is an impressive list of existing actions to date, but no indication of emission reductions achieved. And at the current pace, the Council is very unlikely to meet their target of 63% by 2025, just 2 years away. The version 2 action plan is planned for publication in early 2024. This is just a year and a half away and 4 years since we started this process, leaving precious little time to achieve this target reduction. Analysis suggests that local authority is only directly responsible for 2% of the UK emissions, but can influence 40% within the community. In this context, the refocus of priorities and urgency might help us to get to the target reduction sooner. For example, an urgent focus on home insulation, acknowledged nationally as the most cost-effective approach, should be our priority. This, together with the determination to ensure all new builds in the authority should be required to meet a higher building standard than currently in place. If gas boilers in new builds are to be legally banned from 2025, just 2 years from now, why not insist on it now? Such action would show leadership. Together with home insulation, we would be able to demonstrate a faster reduction in carbon emissions, better health, and economic sense. Finally, concern was expressed in the Cabinet submission that there are risks associated with the publication of the CCAP, relating to a potential positive and negative response expected from the public, and partner organisations such as the Kirklees Climate Commission. Does this show a lack of engagement with the Commission? Indeed, have the Commission seen the report and approved it? And the same applies to the West Yorkshire Combined Authority. Is there a lack of confidence in the plan? Thank you for listening. I look forward to speedy progress.
Thank you. I'd like to invite Councillor Simpson to respond, please.
Thank you very much for joining the meeting this evening. Thank you very much for your passion and everything that you've said. Very much appreciate it, and was very much listening to everything that you've said. Yes, the Commission have been engaged throughout. They've been involved in the Climate Change Action Plan throughout the publication of it. We've, of course, set up the Kirklees Climate Commission for such a reason, and they're continuing to be engaged as we also develop our environmental sustainability strategy as well, which takes on board the wider issues of environmental sustainability rather than just to focus on carbon, as of course the Climate Change Action Plan is. Since declaring the climate emergency in 2019, Kirklees Council has consistently worked hard to deliver an ambitious programme of activity which contributes to addressing carbon emission reductions and vulnerability to climate change. The Council recognises the need to continue moving forward on its pathway to net zero and climate ready by 2038 and to continue to rise to this challenge and be a leader achieving positive change with the support of our local partner organisations, businesses and residents, in addition to the support of national government and regional partners. This continues to be a challenging ambition, but it also remains a great opportunity to improve the quality of life and create a better borough that's healthier, more sustainable and fairer for everyone. The Kirklees Climate Change Action Plan sets out a list of over 200 potential priority actions for carbon reduction and climate resilience. These can be taken by the Council, key partners and members of the wider community to help deliver the District's ambitious net zero and climate ready target 12 years ahead of the National Government's target. The CCAP is the next step in our climate action planning journey as we move from phase 1 of delivery and utilise the detailed actions as a core strategic document that drives our phase 2 response to the climate emergency over the coming years. But we also recognised when declaring the climate emergency that not simply a document was the answer and immediate action was important as well. That's why immediately after declaring the climate emergency, we embarked on delivering an ambitious set of phase 1 actions, and many of these are outlined in the dozens of completed and ongoing actions that are mentioned within the plan. As a result, we've delivered a significant number of projects and achieved a significant number of planned objectives, including overachieving against our previous target, which was a 40% reduction in the Council's emissions, and we achieved 53.5% a year early against that previous target. But of course, our new target is much more ambitious and encompasses the entire district, not just the Council's own emissions. We're now sourcing 100% of our energy from renewables for council buildings and schools, which has cut our district carbon usage by 17,250 tonnes per year. We're planting tens of thousands of trees each year and are leading the White Rose Forest Scheme, which is planting 7 million in Western North Yorkshire by 2025. We've invested £1 million in our fleet to convert to electric and low-emission vehicles. We're investing £1 million in electric vehicle charging. We've converted 97% of our streetlights to LEDs and launched the leading retrofitting pilot on Abbey Road, which has achieved a 75% carbon reduction saving for tenants in those properties and is saving them hundreds of pounds a year on their energy bills during this cost of living crisis. We also recognise that we need to have a plan in place that's going to meet the future requirements. We've ensured that we comply with international best practice by choosing to voluntarily disclose our emissions and climate plans to the independent CDP. And I'm very pleased that the Council has achieved a grade B in this year's assessment, improving on last year's results and putting Kirklees Council above the regional and global averages. In delivering its Climate Change Action Plan, Kirklees also demonstrates leadership and goes beyond many other local authorities by including adaptation as a core part of our plan. Whilst many local authorities focus only on carbon reduction, Kirklees recognises the importance of broader environmental sustainability and climate resilience alongside carbon mitigation. As Kirklees embarks on its next steps of the climate action journey, it's also important to recognise that our commitment is to make the whole district net zero and climate ready, and that is beyond just Kirklees Council alone to achieve. With the Council accountable for just 4% of the borough's emissions, there continues to be the need for ongoing collaboration and collective action from all our partners, businesses and residents across Kirklees. That's why this action plan is for all of Kirklees and why it's essential that we now take the step of prioritising the highest impact and cost-efficient measures together to make sure that we continue with our strong record of delivery and deliver a fairer, greener future for everyone in Kirklees. Thank you very much again for joining us.
Thank you, Councillor Simpson, and thank you for attending the meeting. Are there any other deputations? No. Okay, are there any public petitions? Okay, item 7, public question time. Are there any public questions? No? Microphone is off. Okay, next item. Item 11. So item 11, the key discussion. So this is the key discussion, the elected Mayor of West Yorkshire Combined Authority. This evening's key discussion will be with the elected Mayor Tracy Braben. A presentation will be given prior to the key discussion debate on the elected Mayor's priorities, which will be followed by a question and answer session. After the presentation, could members please request to speak if they wish to ask a question. I will then broadly apply proportionality across groups. This is in line with what we did last year, so the names on the list may be taken out of order as they appear.
Oh, apologies. I didn't get the proper memo that I had to speak. So sorry about that. And sorry, I was a bit late because there was absolute mayhem on TransPennine. I don't know if anybody's come from Dewsbury or Leeds, because there's been real problems across London, and TransPennine cancelled trains and then cut the 6 carriages down to 3, so the people who couldn't get on, disabled passengers who just couldn't get on. So I don't know if people will be coming late, but if they are, it's probably because they're on those trains, so apologies. I'm so delighted to be back here with so many friends and colleagues. It's like coming home a little bit, so thank you very much for inviting me. And I can't believe it's a year ago since I was last here, when we were in that very odd configuration where it was like doing our GCSEs or something. You seemed miles away in those little those tables, but thank you very much for the invitation. It's a pleasure. I'm going to speak for 10-15 minutes, and then I really look forward to your questions. I'm here to learn as well, because you are the ones connected to your communities. You can tell me the stuff that I'm not across. So this is an exchange of information, and you are the ones that can help. So thank you. My second home, and you know that I grew up here in Batley, born and raised here. I chose, when I became mayor, to live in Kirklees. Everybody knows I live in Slough, because it's such a brilliant place to live, and I know that there's so much potential, so much creativity. It's a fantastic place and a great district. It's got towns and countryside and great businesses, and I really do believe that Kirklees has got so much going for it, and so much of it is about what you do and your dedication. Local councillors who really understand and advocate and deliver, of course, for your communities. Earlier this week, some of you may have noticed that I was launching with Gordon Brown and Sir Keir Starmer exciting plans for deeper and wider devolution in Britain at Nexus in Leeds. It was a really exciting launch, and I do think it's going to be a game changer for our regions and access to greater power to make decisions for ourselves, because I know that unlike those strangers in Whitehall and Westminster, they're dithering and they're delaying on that infrastructure projects that we need and that investment, and then they pass the buck on to councils to pay and to rack up and support their bad decisions. Well, Kirklees just gets on with it. So, that 500,000 to support people this winter, whether that's warm spaces, fuel vouchers, mental health support, debt advice. My own £3 million cost of living fund will bring additionality to that, with money also going to the voluntary and community sector partners, who they know how best to spend it. And as Mayor, that's what I'm here to do, to bring that additionality to the work that you're already doing. Because we know that with government in freefall and increasingly looking inward, public services are on the rocks. We have a benefit system that can't provide the support people need. You are absolutely the safety net for the public. It used to be the benefit system, but now it is those food banks, fuel banks, bed banks, those warm spaces. You are absolutely that safety net. You are the last line of defence against the cost of living crisis. And that's despite all the pressure that's been put on you. We know the poor economic growth, austerity, COVID, and now inflation. You've all stood by the residents of Kirklees. So if I could just say, I'd like to pay tribute to the leadership of this council and to Councillor Pandor and Councillor Scott, who often steps in when Councillor Pandor can't make it. I want to thank you for all that you've done. You've done so much to make Kirklees and West Yorkshire a hub of industry, both as council leader and as chair of the Business, Economy and Innovation Committee at the Combined Authority. And this is at a time when 68% of businesses in West Yorkshire are really worried about their survival. They don't know that they're going to weather this storm. Our £10 million support scheme will be a lifeline for local businesses, both now and over the long term, because when we invest in businesses to green their processes, they're not only putting us on a path to net zero by 2038, also it's bringing down energy bills by in the here and now. And I know that desire to deliver and the impact motivates all of us, a desire to make life easier for the people we represent, because to be honest, why are we here unless that's our motivation? And that's why I've spent the past 18 months absolutely focused on delivery, capping those bus fares at £2, bringing down the day saver to £4.50, working with businesses and my Green Jobs Task Force to create 1,000 new jobs, skilled jobs for young people. The delegation to India, of course, I was in two minds about whether to go or not. Was it too soon after COVID? I was the first mayor to go on a trade mission, but I was really pleased that we came back with 1,000 jobs and tens of millions of pounds of investment in the digital sector. Putting women and girls' safety at the heart of my police and crime plan with a new strategy, and I'm really proud that we've got a new service for stalking. We know that stalking is the slow death, and stalking is far too often part of domestic violence that ends up in death. We didn't have the protocols in place. We didn't have the support for victims of stalking. So now we do, and I'm really proud of that. There's some of the achievements that will have an impact now and over the medium term. But of course, we have to also focus on the long term, the strategic planning for the future, on being out of each of the 5 districts. So I've been speaking to local councillors and constituents about their priorities and, of course, the additional value I can bring with my soft powers as mayor. That's why our consultation on the police and crime plan was the biggest ever held in West Yorkshire. We reached out to families, to sex workers, to Gypsy Roma travellers, to those furthest away from the police, those with potentially the least faith in the police, for them to tell us what they wanted. That's why my big bus chat has engaged community groups in Kirklees and beyond, how they want us to spend our bus service improvement plan money. And I'm sure all of you in this room will have received casework about bus cancellations and reliability, and it's certainly not good enough. And Arriva in particular has had a whole raft of quite shocking cuts, and first to some degree as well. And it's shocking because I've done everything in my power to support the bus companies. So when they said they couldn't recruit drivers, I was able to work with them, and this was an innovation, it's never been done before, work with all the partners, all the bus companies and myself to launch 1,000 recruitment drive for 1,000 bus drivers. When they said they couldn't train drivers, I used my adult education budget money to set up courses to train drivers. And to make sure I can do everything in my power to prevent them from cutting services. I also brought together the Northern Mayors to lobby government to say you can't stop the bus recovery grants. We can't have that cliff edge. We got a further extension. And I said to the bus operators, this further extension, this work, this commitment is on the understanding you don't cut services. And here we are with services cut across our region. So it's frustrating and disappointing because people shouldn't be forced into private cars or taxis because they can't get a bus to work or to college. This is not how we grow our economy, and it's certainly not how we tackle the climate crisis. We have to be growing our network, don't we? Not just holding up the remnants of what the network looks like currently. And I've got ambitious plans for public transport in West Yorkshire. And finally, thanks to the enhanced partnership, we have the money to deliver some of our ambitions. So that's £70 million for buses, and that's on top of the £830 million for transport infrastructure, including mass transit, which is going to be a real game changer. You know that Leeds is the only city in Europe without a mass transit. But it's not just about Leeds, it's also about that connectivity with Kirklees, with Bradford, with Wakefield, with Calderdale. We have to have that connection. This money is also for funding road maintenance and renewal, bus prioritisation on roads, active travel, potholes, funding for 111 new zero-emission buses. And this is honestly a historic moment for our region. And here in Kirklees, it will be a game changer. If we can get the transport network working, just think what we can achieve. And transform it in the way that London-style transport network, that means that when people think about investing in London, they know that their workforce can get to that place of work. We only receive a third of what people in London and the South East receive per head. It's just not right, it's not fair, and it's been going on for far too long. And without those operator profits to reinvest back into our bus network, it's going to be an uphill battle. But I really believe that is a battle worth fighting. Because for our region to flourish, we need that cheap, reliable and integrated public transport network. And without that enhanced partnership, we wouldn't have been able to apply for the £30 million that's going to help us invest in new routes and services. But these cuts to routes and services now are a timely reminder of the failure, the absolute failure of the current model, and the reason why we are, and we did it from day one, embarking on an assessment about franchising. Sticking to what is given to us, which is government timetables, we'll be in a position to put forward a comprehensive programme of bus reform in the first quarter of 2024. But till then, I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure the bus network is as good as it could be and deliver that investment across Kirklees. So £2 million for active travel, £30 million for the local transport plan, £142 million through the transport fund. And when you include Brownfield Housing Fund, Growth Deal, Transforming Cities Fund, you're looking at another £288 million of funding committed to projects in Kirklees alone. And this aligns with my 10 manifesto pledges. We've already created the 1,000 green, well-paid jobs for young people. We've assigned £40 million to our Climate Environment Action Plan. We're on track, thank goodness, to hit our 750 police officers and staff by the end of my term, but so much more to do. The scourge of off-road biking, also speeding, to recruit enough officers in the face of underfunding from government and to tackle the epidemic of knife crime. I know, and as the Member of Parliament for Batley and Spen, one of my constituents was murdered in Kirklees, and certainly talking to his wife, I absolutely know the impact on his family, but actually also on the people where he worked. Everybody is impacted by a tragic loss like this. And especially when one of the victims is a child, I can't imagine, it's just unimaginable, isn't it, the horror. And that's why the Violence Reduction Unit engages at every level with multi-agency public health approaches. Unique, it's all the partners, it's health, it's housing, it's education. We're all round the table doing what we can. And it's an enforcement response, including plainclothed officers, patrolling antisocial behaviour and violence hotspots, and also preventative funding for local community and voluntary sector organisations. And that's why I'm recruiting more police officers, PCOs and staff. You'll be pleased to know that we've got an uplift of 46 officers in Kirklees, the highest of any district. We still have 361 coming through the recruitment pipeline to be allocated across West Yorkshire. The policing pledge around safety of women and girls, with Alison and myself, with 2 women leading the way with lived experience of violence, and I think that gives us an authenticity and a passion to deliver. We've drawn down £5 million to tackle crimes that disproportionately impact on women and girls. We're encouraging bold and creative tactics like public space protection orders to stop street harassment, expanding stop and search to tackle spiking. Supporting the Safety of Women and Girls strategy was launched a couple of weeks ago. But for Kirklees to thrive, we need more good jobs, and that's why Combined Authority is stepping in to support them more than ever. And Kirklees businesses since 2015 have received over £10.5 million of grant investment from the Mayoral Combined Authority. That's leveraged private sector investment of £40 million, created 2,000 jobs with a further 1,500 in the pipeline. And I know where there's opportunity, there's a challenge. Our local businesses are struggling with the cost of doing business, sky-high energy bills. And that's why we're funding 4 business-facing posts in Kirklees Council, working with SMEs and startups. And the question is, what does it actually mean? Well, for Kirklees, it means K-Flex Limited, Dewsbury-based bed manufacturers getting £7,000 to improve energy efficiency. Pair 9 Industrial Equipment, Skelmanthorpe-based conveyor company, £45,000 to invest in expanding premises. Fish Tank Creative, Murfield, creative digital agency, £9,500 grant to invest in new equipment and tech. Deluxe Beds in Birkby, supported with £6,500 of advice and guidance on how to recycle and reuse mattresses. This is just some examples of our commitment to Kirklees and, of course, to West Yorkshire and to your economy. We need buses that turn up on time. We need to invest in business. We need women to feel safe on our streets. And we need to make sure that your constituents get every ounce of additionality I can give to add to the brilliant work that you are all doing for the people of West Yorkshire. Now, that's an extensive run-through because I wanted you all to know the detail of exactly where we're investing in Kirklees. Obviously, there are 5 local authorities, and we're doing similar across the whole of our region. And I really hope you believe and feel and understand that I will be your champion at every level, whether that's with government, asking for more money, or working with you on constituency work and casework. So thank you all. I'm really looking forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor Braben. Thank you for your presentation and allowing plenty of time for questions. As I said at the beginning, there's a list of questions. If you want to put your name down to speak, I will take names out of order and broadly apply proportionality across groups. And we will start with Councillor Hall, Steve Hall.
The simple one is this. I was down at Union office yesterday and we were talking about it. And it's the Fair Workers Charter. First of all, we support it 100%. It's something that is very, very important, is that workers feel valued. If they feel valued and they're spoken to as though they're an adult, they're not pushed, shoved, bullied, factories work, they'll get a lot more out of workers. And what it is, what my question to you is basically, we know that Liverpool have got it, Manchester's got it. When will ours be implemented?
Thank you, Councillor Hall. I think I'm so grateful you've asked this question because this was one of my manifesto pledges. And what really matters to me is that we get it right. In a cost of living crisis and at a time when it's challenging for businesses, what we don't want is just the big companies to sign up for it and think they're doing a great thing. It's something they would always, they're already paying, above the minimum wage, they're paying the real living wage, they're doing other interventions, so they're just saying, aren't we great, we sign up to it. Because looking in detail and working with the TUC, we have had a number of engagement sessions, really digging down into what's going to work. What I don't want is it just to be for show. I don't want it to be something good that we did, we ticked a box, and I've got a Fair Work Charter like Manchester and Liverpool. I want to make it mean something. So we are going into deeper consultation on the details of it's got to be carrot and stick, hasn't it? So the carrot, at a time of economic chaos and crisis, we've got to get the carrot right, which will help those family businesses, those SMEs, sign up to it because they know they're going to get something out of it. And I think that's where the detailed work has been ongoing. I don't want it just to be for show. It's got to work. So I am hoping that we will have it at some time around May next year. And I know everybody's been waiting for it a long time, but I really would want to reassure you that's not because of my lack of commitment to the Fair Work Charter. It's something that's very important. But also to share with you that we are committed to funding Union Learn on the understanding that we know that those people who potentially have missed out on learning can get learning in the workplace funded by us but supported by people that they trust, and they don't have to go to college for a year or wherever to get extra skills. But thank you for answering that, and very happy to send you more detail of where we're at.
Councillor Hawkins, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and thank you, Mayor. This week you introduced the Commission on the UK's Future final report, led by former Prime Minister Gordon Brown. The findings of the report, which Keir Starmer is committed to implement in the first term of a Labour government, commits further devolved powers to mayors and local leaders, dubbed double devolution. I would like to ask what your thoughts are on future devolution, should we see such reforms after the next election. Personally, I believe regional government is missing a more direct elected representation within the combined authority, which could take the form of an elected assembly or akin to something like the county council system we saw. Rather than another layer of politicians, having more representatives like yourself speaking on behalf of West Yorkshire, rather than Kirklees, Calderdale, Wakefield, Bradford or Leeds, would strengthen our region's identity, encourage cross-district cooperation and give further support to you as the Mayor. Of course, there's other visions like a One Yorkshire or a more federal system, but I would greatly appreciate hearing your thoughts on what the next steps are for devolution in our part of the world and what powers you need to move West Yorkshire forward again. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkin. I don't know if people have read it or you've seen the press release about it, but it potentially could be a game changer for us. But very interesting that at the event, it was lots of lobby journalists have come up from Westminster to ask the questions, and they were all focused on the House of Lords. And they're talking about the House of Lords like this is not the biggest issue that is going to change lives in West Yorkshire. I think it's going to be really exciting that Keir Starmer has committed to that consultation now, rather than waiting for another 2 years when hopefully there will be a Labour government. But that consultation is starting now with the public, with the devolved nations in Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales, with the mayors across the M10. I think it's going to be exciting. Now, for me, ideas such as devolving job centres, well, actually, here in West Yorkshire, we're sort of doing something similar, that we are supporting those people the furthest away from work, protecting them, supporting them to get into a place where they could even find a job and carrying them through with compassion into work. So I think that sort of devolution is really interesting, but I think enabling our voice to be heard at the centre of power, where we have a regions and nations where we are represented, where we don't have to keep going into beauty contests for small pots of money. For those of you who know the investment zones that were mooted by the previous Prime Minister, we had to do a lot of work about that to pitch to government, and then they changed their mind. And then it's not investment zones anymore, it's universities, and it's areas of deprivation where they have a university. So again, we spend time and money working out how we pitch in, competing with other regions for EV charging points. This just does not make sense. And I've always made the case that we should get money directly from Treasury, and we would be then held to account. Put us in front of the audit committee or a select committee. Hold us to account in the way that our assurance process holds others to account. So I think it is a real game changer. I think it's exciting. One Yorkshire isn't where I would be going with this conversation, because I think deepening and widening the powers we have now is important. Already, the border between South Yorkshire and West Yorkshire is pretty porous. Oliver Coppard and I do a fair amount of work together. You know, the 42,000 people commute on a daily basis between both regions. I do feel greater, deeper powers over skills, greater, deeper powers over post-16 education. I want to see a devolved careers service, that 5-star gold-plated careers offer. We need to be more agile when it comes to business investment, to say to them, you need, I don't know, glass fitters, or you need battery makers. We can then set up those courses so you can have that workforce. There's a whole raft of detail in there. Culture, another one, where it isn't decided where the culture money goes from London and Arts Council England. Actually, it is discussed amongst all of us about what we think culture is, who should be funded, and so on. So there's a whole load of great detail in there. And while it is 129 pages, I'm sure there's some executive summary somewhere that people could get hold of. But I think it's exciting. And I know that the Conservatives have said they want to see more mayors. That is a great thing. It is about more mayors, but those mayors have to have the powers and the money. Otherwise, it's just token gesture. And just to share with you, the way that the challenge that we have, at one point, there was a number 10 advisor, came on the train from London to my office to tell me that we weren't allowed a green roof in Halifax bus station because it was too expensive. I'm like, you've come all the way to London to let me know that a project that is for our community, that we can't have something nice, something green, and something that works for us. We know what we need. You know what you need, your communities need. To be told by strangers in Whitehall and Westminster has got to stop. So I think it's really important that we keep up that passion for that voice of our region in those corridors of power. I don't know if the colleagues would like to contribute.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson, please.
Thank you, Chair. I've just got a little bit of an email. It's reference to the police, an email to a potential recruit, which starts off, West Yorkshire Police is currently underrepresented by women and people of ethnic minority backgrounds in accordance with the Equity Act. We offer those from underrepresented groups the opportunity to apply at any time. So my question's wrapped up in 2 or 3 ways. One is, as far as the recruitment of new police officers, do you, Tracy, feel that the degrees process is slowing down the recruitment of new police officers, and or do you feel that the statement in an email sent to a white male that's just left university, it could be to do with the racism that's involved in recruiting new officers at this moment in time, or do you think it's a mixture of both?
Well, thank you for that question. What I would say is I'm hugely proud that West Yorkshire Police, again, has been, by Peel standards, been designated as outstanding. When I became the Mayor of West Yorkshire, I committed 100% to get our West Yorkshire Police to reflect the communities we serve. And Alison Lowe has been an exceptional Deputy Mayor leading the way. And as a woman of colour, she understands more than most that we have to build trust if we are going to police by consent. That trust is built by representation. We are, across the UK, one of the most highly regarded recruiters for people of colour and women. I'm also very proud that we have one of the lowest attrition rates for women in the police force. I will continue to back that programme. I will continue to back that focus. And I wake up every morning delighted that I am not the Police and Crime Commissioner for the Met, because we are not in that place. And that is about leadership. It's about a direction of travel. And I will not apologise for trying to get a police force that reflects the people we serve.
Councillor Homewood, please.
Thank you. I just wanted to touch on the buses situation and the transport stuff. I thought it was really helpful to hear about the enhanced bus partnership, and I appreciate how much work has to go into that to bring all the sides together. But I also noted what you were mentioning about wanting to have a transport system, you know, something like London, where we can have really good public transport. And one of the things that just struck me is the difference there in terms of their setup, in terms of public control, clear accountability through to the mayor for the decisions, and the investment that's had in that transport system. And I just wanted to get your views on, in terms of working through the enhanced partnership, potentially to the next level of having proper public control of buses, what that could actually do for us in West Yorkshire, and how much you think that would help, and how much actually is needing proper investment from government to actually take seriously the needs around public transport. And that obviously ties into what we're talking about later in terms of the climate emergency, because it does feel to me that for whatever reason it's hard to understand that public transport doesn't seem to be an area of focus and investment, and I struggle to understand sometimes why the government are not focused on that. So just any thoughts you have would be great.
Thank you for that. Buses, my favourite topic, thank you. It was very interesting when the Northern Mayors met with the new Transport Secretary to get his views on buses, because for the first time, actually, we've got a Transport Secretary that is collaborative and seems to be listening, but also that does appreciate that the bus network needs support. Now, we are doing our bit, and the enhanced partnership enabled us to push that relationship so we could get the £2 fare. And I'm very proud that we were the first to do the £2 fare and pushed Manchester into a position where they were, oh, we better do it now. We thought we'd do it later, but we can do it now. And then government, the officers were ringing my officers saying, how did you do this? And so they are now bringing it in from January for only 3 months. Ours is for 3 years. But I agree with you. It is not tenable that we are going to be running a bus network like London without support. In London, the tube network, that supports the cost of the buses. Now, we don't have a tube network, so we have got to get into a strong economic position to make it work. Now, I think those profits from the bus companies, imagine if they were woven into more routes and cleaner buses and, you know, new buses. We could use that profits for the good of the community. And I also believe it's a public service. You know, we empty the bins for free, and we should be running buses that are cheap and available and help us get around. It's just a public service. So the process is frustrating, but we will be making the decision about franchising before my next election in 2024. And I'll go out to the public with that as part of my manifesto. That is this what you want? Once we've done all that due diligence and that legal work that's asked of government. So I'm with you. I support you. We need to make it better.
Councillor Sheard.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Like many rural areas across Kirklees, East Byley seriously lacks bus connections. East Byley is a village that East Byley has a population which heavily relies on bus services to see family, friends, and to get to hospital appointments. I mean, you mentioned when you were giving your introductory speech that you had capped bus fares, and that's all good and well, but I first need a bus to get on. Exactly. So, Tracy, what conversations have you had, and actually what action have you taken since entering the office of Mayor, so that rural villages like East Byley do see an increase in those bus connections that they really need?
Thank you for that. And honestly, every day of the week, I'm having conversations with operators. I had a meeting a couple of weeks ago, dragging them all in to say, you've got to stop cutting these routes. We've a public duty to replace routes where people are disconnected. But that means we're all paying. That means that they can hold a gun to our head and say, we're pulling up. Sorry? Oh, was it a cough? Oh, gosh, echoed. So they are saying that they can pull out of a route and then we go back in and we pay them to run it. So I've said, those companies that pull out of a route, we are not going to pay them to then just reinstate it, because it could be any route, anywhere, and we could end up by the back door paying for all the routes that they're not making a profit on, and then we are paying for all those socially needed routes, and they are just running the profitable ones. It's not working. It is broken, and I am so sorry for the people of East Baileigh. It's such a great place to live as well. Imagine how great it would be if you had a regular bus service. But honestly, if you want to approach my office and we can see what we can do, we're trying to be creative. We're trying to bring in smaller operators to run, trials on ones where you can dial up on your mobile and get, rapid response to come and get buses for smaller communities. But it isn't working. And unfortunately, I can't fix this system because the system is as it is, and that is why we need the conversation about franchising. But very happy to look at your particular route if you want to send me your numbers. And that's because, thank you, but thank you for, if you reach out again and we'll see. But my problem is we are reinstating routes to people who've cut it and giving them the money back. And it's a decision you have to make.
Thank you. Councillor Amanda Pinnock.
Hi, Tracy. Nice to see you. Okay. So, Tracy, you talked about policing and crime. Okay, and you alluded to an incident that happened in my ward where a child was stabbed and fatally killed. And as you can imagine, that sent a real shockwave through the community. But it does feel as though this may not be an isolated incident, and that, just last week we had another stabbing. And it feels as though potentially it could be endemic, and that's not what we want. It's really worrying. We're not used to seeing things like this in Kirklees, and we need to find a solution. The community wants a solution. We need some answers. What we've done before doesn't seem to be working. We need to change what we're doing and find some real solutions and have that collaborative working with the police, with the council, partners, and the community. And I just want to know really if you have any answers, any suggestions of how we might be able to do things differently that can make that difference to the community. What we don't want is another mother to lose her child. We don't want to see any more fatalities, any more incidents involving particularly young people. We need to be steering them away from criminality. We need to be finding something else that can, give them the incentive, whether it's, training or, just steering them away from criminality. And as a mum myself, I'm really, really concerned about this. We need to find those solutions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And as I said in my opening remarks, it was it was very shocking, and how awful for the family. And it can't continue. We have to have that public health approach. This is not just about the police. You're absolutely right. This is about health. It's about education. It's about poverty. It's about lack of purpose and access to knives as well. And that's been quite a big piece of work we've been doing with Operation Gemlock, which is taking knives off the street. And if you're ever in Leeds at the Armouries, there's at the sharp end of the sharp edge, there's an exhibition of all the weapons that they've confiscated, and it would make your hair curl because particularly the zombie knives are really shocking that you can buy these things. With in particular reference to what's happening in Kirklees, I've got some notes here because I thought that this might come up, that we've provided enhanced support. Is it Ashbrow? Yeah, in Ashbrow. We've released extra funding to local voluntary organisations. The Violence Reduction Unit, which is mine, which I fund, we've got a deterrence car, which is undercover and out of uniform officers that are there, eyes and ears on the ground, trying to witness and look at where people are gathering, where there's antisocial behaviour, and they're experienced about what to look for and divert people away from violence. The victim services, obviously there are victims in this. We've been able to get £14 million from the Ministry of Justice, and that's 70 different programmes across West Yorkshire. But I think your point is also about diversion. And there's a great programme in Kirklees called Safety in Music that we fund, which is pivoting young people at risk of getting into gangs or getting into crime. And one of the stories of a young girl who was at risk of being groomed and getting into crime was learning how to be a music producer. And then I spoke to her, and she was starting her degree at Leeds Met, doing exactly that. And that is the sort of journey, that intervention work that we need to do. Also, independent sexual violence advisors. We've been able to get money from government for more of those, 25 more, and one specifically for young people, one for men. And I think part of the problem as well is when people are victims of crime, the process takes so long that they fall away, and so justice isn't served. So I hope with the IDVAs and ISVAs that victims will be supported and we will get better outcomes. But I take your point, but this is why my approach and our approach for our police and crime plan is a public health approach. We will not solve this by getting more police officers on the street. We just won't. We have got to tackle early intervention, and that's why it was one of my themes, one of my really important pillars, early intervention and prevention. We've got to get in early with these families and help them, help their children, divert them away from violence, stop them having access to these sharp weapons. And if I may just also say that there's a real problem about sentencing as well, that you may have seen that the mother of Poppy DV Waterhouse, she was a young woman in Leeds. Her ex came to the flat that they'd both lived in, and he stabbed her 49 times. And because he'd taken the knife out of the block rather than taking it with him, his sentence was 10 years less. So if you're stabbed in the street, it's a mandatory life sentence. If you're stabbed and killed in a domestic setting, it's 10 years less. So I'm working with Poppy's mum to try and balance that out as fairness. So if there are things that are happening in your constituencies where you feel there is an injustice, we can amplify the work that you're doing. So please do come to me. And if you would like, if Alison Lowe hasn't been to come to talk to you, let's set that up, because I think sometimes it's also about reassurance, isn't it, in communities.
Thank you. Councillor Marchington, please.
Thank you. Tracy, you suggested that a potential solution to West Yorkshire's train problems is renationalisation. I know that's in tune with public opinion, but can you explain how that will deliver better quality rail services both within and through West Yorkshire?
Well, we're almost there at the moment, because Northern is run by government, because it was the operator of last resort, because it was so parlous. I think fundamentally, I'm sure we can all agree, whatever political party in this room, that this isn't working. It's just not working. When TransPennine can cancel 60 services in a day across our regions, 60 a week across our regions, and then there's no impact on their income. I mean, how does that work? This is not good enough. If you're a business and you're not delivering, but you're still getting paid for everything. That's not working. Now, we have said to the Secretary of State that if you think you can't solve this problem, then there is an opportunity, in the same way that they've done it with Merseyrail in Liverpool, to let local leaders, advised and supported by councillors like yourself, to intervene and to say where we want these routes, how often, and to make sure that they deliver for the public. We cannot carry on as we are. Now, it looks like Avanti is going to be put on notice, so that may go back, that may go into government hands. It's currently run by First. TransPennine cannot continue like this, because next May, they come up for a renewal of their contract, which could potentially be another 8 years. Another 8 years of this mayhem. People missing job opportunities, funerals, not being able to get to cultural events, not being able to choose the university they want to go to because they can't rely on the transport. Businesses telling me they can't recruit people from Manchester because people from Manchester can't guarantee they'll get to Leeds and vice versa. So it's really important that we have a plan. And I think when people talk about renationalisation, they remember back to the old British Rail. It doesn't have to be like that. We have got foreign companies running our networks, taking the profits back to their nationalised networks in their own countries. This doesn't seem to be right or sensible. So there's got to be an intervention, because we can't carry on, because every week that goes by, the impact to our economy in West Yorkshire alone is £2 million from this chaos. 8 million across the north. Just think what we could do with that investment. Just think of all those businesses, those startups that could, that could be flourishing. It is holding us back, and we have got to intervene.
Thank you. Councillor Cooper, please.
Hi, Tracy. If we're really going to get more people to have faith in politics and to engage with the political system, shouldn't we have fair votes and a system of proportional representation to elect our elected representatives? In the local elections when you were elected, and I wasn't, let it go. Every day and every way I'm getting better. In those local elections, Greens got 10% of the vote, to the Lib Dems 9%. Now the Lib Dems, they have a seat on the combined authority, and the Green Party doesn't. Now I don't begrudge them the seat, but 61,101 Green voters are not represented on the combined authority. And so their votes essentially are ignored in the system that we have today. In scrutiny, Greens have 1 seat in West Yorkshire scrutiny. The Lib Dems, and again, I don't begrudge them, they have 6. So though we got more votes, we have less representation there. Does devolution really matter if voters' views are ignored?
Thank you, and thank you for your approach to winning the mayoral elections. And look, I would say 61,000 Green voters are represented because they're represented by me. And I am committed to tackling the climate emergency by 2038. And I've committed £40 million to the climate emergency. I am not sat on my hands. 1,000 jobs in the green sectors. I'm determined to deliver for those 61,000. But in all seriousness, I'm open-minded about proportional representation. I do think it does open up an opportunity for greater diversity. Let's not forget I'm the only Metro Mayor in the whole of the country that is a woman. And if we, what do we need to do to get more diversity at the very top? I think the government have changed the voting process for the next mayoral election, that it's not preferential votes. It's first past the post, so I think there's going to be a change there. But very happy to take up with you about how we allocate seats in another moment, in another meeting, if you so wish.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Cooper. You didn't sound begrudging at all. Councillor Watson, please.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor, and good evening, Tracy. I'm going to be a little bit more parochial than some of the big issues that we've discussed at the moment. You said that one of the reasons you're here was for an exchange of information. The reason I'm here is to represent the good people of Denby Dale. Looking at the introduction to your police and crime plan, you do mention that as part of the consultation, 95.5% of people said that for them, safer communities and so forth was a priority. And there are 3 priorities actually that you mentioned that came out of that, one of which is road safety. And the bit of feedback that I would give you is that probably the biggest issue that I get raised with me in Denby Dale is road safety and speeding in particular. And looking at the plan that you put through there, I can see a picture of a policeman with a speed camera, but there's not a great deal is actually said about it. And that's understandable because it's a high-level strategy document and so forth. So my question to you really would be, if that is recognised in your plan and is recognised as being a major concern for a lot of people throughout West Yorkshire, what does success look like for the people of Denby Dale? If that is something that you seek to address, because it is a concern that's been raised with you, is it in 12 months, 24 months, 4 years, whatever? What will the people of Denby Dale expect to see in terms of something measurable that makes them feel that the roads are safer and speeding is less of an issue? Thank you.
Thank you for that. Too many people are harmed by speeding cars. We know that. And that's why, having been the Member of Parliament for Batley and Spen, I have definitely sat in too many front rooms with families who've lost loved ones because of speeding cars. And that's why, becoming the Mayor, I made it a priority, and Vision Zero is a national programme. We'd slightly stalled in our region about the outcomes from Vision Zero and the investment. So I asked Alison Lowe, my deputy, to be chair. And now we have, it's a panel and it's buy-in from all of the regions. So it's a communal effort. And we've now got the support and the drive from Leeds City Council. So I am going to see changes, and we are definitely going to be turbocharging Vision Zero. I mean, what would success look like? Nobody's harmed or killed on the road, but of course we know, we can reach for our ideal. But I think if there are things that you are particularly interested in, if there are hotspots that you would like to flag to us, please do contact me, and I'll make sure that Alison is across that, because it's really, really important, and far too many people are harmed by speeding cars. Thanks.
Thank you. We have 8 minutes left, so if the Mayor would choose to be brief with the answers, we could fit in the final 3.
If you want to cluster them, would that be helpful, Chair? No?
Councillor Lukic, please.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. Mayor Braben, thanks again for coming to Dewsbury on Remembrance Sunday. It's very much appreciated seeing you there. Tomorrow morning, there's 2 very important meetings. You're chairing a combined authority meeting where you're discussing transport schemes to be paused due to inflationary costs, I understand. Also, tomorrow morning in this chamber, the Strategic Planning Committee considering one of the largest development proposals in Dewsbury at the Chidswell site, well over 1,000 homes plus an employment allocation. So one of the transport schemes that's proposed to be paused is the Murfield to Dewsbury to Leeds scheme. And it's actually the Kirklees elements of the scheme that are proposed to be paused when Dewsbury has essentially got thousands of homes in the local plan expected to be developed. So my question, I suppose, to put it most simply is your combined authority telling Dewsbury residents, we're expecting you to build thousands more homes, but we're not going to necessarily be able to provide all the infrastructure that goes with it?
Thank you. The reason why, thank you for that question, because it's been really difficult the last few months that we are facing, like all businesses, a real challenge with inflationary pressures on our buildings, on our transformational plans. I know that what we don't want is half-built schemes because we then run out of money. What we need to do, and I've said this right from the beginning, is we need to develop a pipeline of projects. So when government say, we now have this fund and in 3 months' time you've got to give us plans, that we have those projects that are in the pipeline to deliver. But the inflationary pressures mean that we had to ask all of our partners to look at what they could put into the pipeline, that they could, it isn't cut or paused, it is in the pipeline, and these projects will get to a point, whether that's the outline business case or the strategic business case, will get to a point where they can then be ready to go. Because I understand what you're saying, that we need that connection between housing projects and infrastructure. We do. But when governments are not giving us extra money, remember the City Region Sustainable Transport Settlement, whilst it sounds like a shed load of money, and it is, that does not factor in the inflationary pressures that we're going to be facing. And the inflationary pressures of projects that are currently on site that have struggled with Brexit and COVID and now double-digit inflation. So we've had to take a view, as you all have, with your own council budgets, taking very painful decisions about what you have to cut and pause. And, you know, my own swimming pool is going to be closed because of, you know, inflationary pressures on council budgets. And I will make the case every meeting I'm at that councils are they are the safety net. They are the ones that need the funding, and that government cannot expect councils to take the hit for their chaotic economic plans.
Councillor Ball, please.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. Before I start, could I ask if we can extend this as myself and Councillor Smith, and so that the questions can be asked and answered in a complete manner? Could this period be extended so that that can take place? Yeah, but we've only got about 2 minutes from what the Deputy...
Yeah. Yes.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. Thank you. And thank you, Tracy, for coming. We've heard today about the chaos and the problems on bus services. I'm sure your district transport lead has kept you informed that this is something which happens throughout Kirklees. It's not just restricted to certain areas. The operators may differ, but I'm sure that the issues are the same. I'm going to focus mainly on Arriva, because they're the service which have caused problems for Mirfield residents, for students in Mirfield trying to get to school, and for the thousands of people who are on the North Kirklees Facebook group dealing with bus issues. They cause problems for your alma mater, Heckman Dwight Grammar School, because they changed the bus timetable. The school finishes at 3:15, and the bus leaves Heckman Dwight Town Centre at past. Now, I'm sure you'll remember that if you've been doing games, music or anything else, getting from one side of Ecky Grammar to the other, collecting your stuff and getting to the town centre is impossible. But that's Arriva's scheduling. They're causing problems for your former neighbours in Hartshead, Robertstown and Mirfield by diverting bus routes and not giving them the same service. They're the ones who are causing workers to either be late for work or have to pay for taxis with no recompense. But what's causing concern as well to many residents is that the mayoral authority, along with Kirklees and the other authorities, have signed the enhanced partnership plan. It says here it was made on the 31st of March and came into operation on the 1st of April. There's lots of good words in there, but what we're not seeing is action. So what I'd like to know is, when are we going to see immediate action on this document that was signed in March and came into place in April?
Is that your question, Councillor Ball?
No.
Lovely question.
Not yet.
I will have to rush you, though,
I'm
because we're
giving
going to move on.
context, Mr. Mayor,
As you suggested, we will move on.
I'm giving context,
You've got another
Mr.
minute.
Mayor.
1 minute.
Mr. Mayor, I'm giving context. If you want to disenfranchise the people of Mirfield, it's up to you. So let's look at the obligations of the signatories and your views on them. The authorities will maintain bus lanes and traffic signals, yet Kirklees and yourself are spending £70 million on Cooper Bridge with no bus lane on approach and years of disruption. Your authority will maintain bus stops and shelters, yet their new 229 service running through Mirfield and Robertstown will have no shelters and no real-time information to protect the passengers on Mirfield Moor, to keep them informed of when the services are and to build up confidence. The partnership requires 70 days' notice of variations, But this October's changes came much faster than that, and your authority, which is responsible for timetables, left outdated timetables in Hartshead and Robertown at remote locations, meaning vulnerable users have been left standing for hours. How does this square with the safety of women policy?
Thank you, Councillor Butt. We're going to move on to an answer. It's a very good question, and we'll get a good answer.
Thank you, Councillor Bolt. And I really hope that you've submitted all of that fantastic data to the Mayor's Big Bus Chat.
No,
because the Mayor's Big Bus Chat is the way to get all that data. And we've signed the enhanced partnership, which meant we got £70 million. And I'm sure, Councillor, you wouldn't begrudge our community £70 million to make buses better across our region.
Thank you. And Councillor Bolt, I'm sure you wouldn't begrudge me allowing and affording the opportunity for all members to have a question from all areas, districts around Kirklees. Thank you. Absolutely, and I've done it to a T. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and thank you, Mayor, for your attendance. Thank you very much. It seems like all our public services and services delivered by local councils are under increased pressures and many at breaking point. My question to you is in respect of local policing, which you have responsibility for. And I can see a huge budget deficit coming down the line due to inflationary pressures and a lack of funding. I'm just wondering what you can do to support West Yorkshire Police, lobby ministers, and ensure that frontline services are not impacted directly by the lack of funding.
Thank you. I'll be brief because I know people have to get off. I'm continually challenging the government about funding for our police. We know that the starting salary for a young officer, the money that we've got from government, it's the starting salary, but it doesn't pay for uniforms or training. The new Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, wrote to West Yorkshire Police saying she wanted 20% more outcomes, more arrests, but without extra funding. It is not tenable with the inflationary pressures on the West Yorkshire Police and energy pressures, let's not forget, on buildings and so on, that we can continue like this. So I am a continual advocate for West Yorkshire Police. But I'm also concerned about how best we serve our communities, whilst you may not have the officers' numbers that you want to see on the streets, but we have got the Mayor's Community Safety Fund, which I would encourage all councillors to apply for. We've extended it from £6,000 to £8,000 for projects that are about early intervention, about young people and safety of women and girls. So there is an opportunity for you to do work in your own communities to support those services. And Community Safety Partnership, you'll know that £5 million goes towards the Community Safety Partnerships that I'm hoping to meet all of the members of that partnership in the next few weeks. But we are, as the Police and Crime Commissioners, as a group, making the case to government. If you want that 5-star police service that is fit for the future, let's not forget, crime is becoming increasingly complicated, then you have to fund it.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor Braben, for attending. Thank you for your time. Thank you also for answering all of the questions and affording the opportunity for all members to have their questions answered. So everybody who put their name down had the question answered. So thank you very much for your time. At this point...
Thank you all. Can I just finally say thank you all so much. It was very collegiate. We all have similar missions. Thank you for your kindness. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, at this point, we'll take a 10 to 15-minute break. Thank you.
to tonight present our Phase 2 Climate Change Action Plan to the full Council. This sets out our ambitions for Kirklees to become a net zero and climate ready district by 2038. I want to say a huge thank you to everyone who's been a part of this work, everyone who responded to our engagements, both the public and ward councillor engagements as well, to the input it received from all of the political groups, the Kirklees Climate Commission, at Scrutiny and at Cabinet. Most of all, I want to say a massive thank you to everyone in my exceptional team who's worked incredibly hard to produce this ambitious plan alongside delivering climate action and working on our environmental sustainability strategy and much more. My particular thanks to Kat, Martin, Sean, John, Rob and everyone in the climate change team for their work. Now, colleagues, this isn't the first presentation you've all had on the action plan, and at recent councils, I think we can all agree that, frankly, we've heard far too much from me. So, thank you very much, comrade. So before I go on to say any more, I'm going to let an animation we've prepared do some but not all of the talking for me. This animation will form the centrepiece of our communications on the plan in the formal launch with our new climate emergency website tomorrow, and I'd ask all of you to support us in sharing this when it does.
Heat waves, wildfires and floods. Gone are the days where we can bury our problems in landfill. We all know climate change is a global issue that leaves us feeling powerless, but no one can escape it, and the consequences will be felt in Kirklees too. So it's time to take a stand, right here, right now. In 2019, Kirklees Council declared a climate emergency based on the ever-growing global awareness of climate change, not only on the planet, but on our communities too. We had to take urgent and immediate action. We have completed our award-winning homes retrofit at Abbey Road with new insulation, new windows and solar panels. We've invested £7 million into electric vehicles and EV charging infrastructure that's helping local people to see electric cars as a viable and affordable alternative. And we began planting 35,000 new trees in the area with the plan on reaching millions in the coming years. That's only a snapshot of right now. We're just getting started. But if we're being honest, real change needs to be longer term and embedded into our way of life. It's why we've moved into our bold and ambitious Phase 2 of our Climate Change Action Plan as part of our Council Plan, Clean and Green Shared Outcomes. We've considered how Kirklees Council can further reduce emissions and improve our resilience to the impacts of climate change. We know net zero emissions and lower energy bills are achievable, so we're looking at the bigger picture. We're tackling all aspects of climate change head on. Our action plan clearly delegates tasks, so we're not just talking, we're doing, and we're asking others to play their part too. This isn't only about securing our environment for future generations. Climate change is already happening, and it will affect us all. But there are steps we can take to manage these risks and do our best to protect our green spaces, our air quality, our health, well-being and livelihoods. So many things that are precious to us. Achieving net zero and climate-ready Kirklees by 2038 will come at a cost, and we know this is a huge barrier to many. But it's less than the cost of not acting now, and we've taken evidence-based steps to prove this. We know we're facing huge challenges, but we're a positive and resilient bunch. We can use this time to create new social and economic opportunities for the benefit of everyone in Kirklees. Our action plan considers 8 key areas. Through strong stakeholder collaboration, we've not just created a list of objectives, but solutions too. It's a bit of a balancing act, and we need everyone involved as a team effort. We are not in this alone, and together we can make a difference. This action plan is just the beginning. We need your support. We're not perfect. We don't have all the answers, which is why we need your help to ensure the actions we prioritise and commit to are the best ones for our communities. Let's take action together and join us in creating a better future.
Thank you very much, colleagues. As you've just seen, this action plan outlines a comprehensive climate change mitigation and adaptation response for our district, addressing the Council's Clean and Green agenda alongside other Council plans and strategies. The plan will also satisfy the Council's annual reporting commitments to the CDP Carbon Disclosure Scheme and the Global Covenant of Mayors, which are schemes that we voluntarily participate in order to align with best practice. It will also align with the guidance and criteria set out by the National Climate Emergency Scorecard campaign. In relation to this, the efforts of our officers and the progress we've made has been reflected in our 2022 CDP score, which was released in mid-November, with us achieving a grade which places us ahead of the national and global average. And as the rating took place in July, we hope that the passage of this climate action plan, continued delivery, and our work on the environmental sustainability strategy will see our continued leadership being recognised even further in next year's assessment. I'm sure the vast majority of you will agree with me that climate change is a huge and complex challenge to address, and it's one for all of us. But it's also a huge opportunity to deliver a fairer, greener future, to protect our environment and our communities from extreme weather, to cut people's bills, to deliver energy security from tyrants like Putin, to re-industrialise left-behind parts of our country and our borough with new, secure, sustainable jobs, and to deliver green growth. This action plan is the next step in Kirklees' action planning journey and climate delivery journey, and sets out a long list of 206 actions for all of Kirklees to become net zero and climate ready by 2038, in partnership with other organisations, individuals, and regional and national government. And I must stress, as I did in Cabinet when discussing this with the support of Councillor Lawson, that we cannot do this on our own. The Council itself is responsible for less than 4% of the borough's emissions, and we have some form of influence on only around a third of the total emissions in the borough. Most of all, this needs national investment. The vast majority of measures we can take, if we're funded properly as outlined in the Net Zero Roadmap, are cost effective. After the capital outlay, they pay for themselves. And Mr Mayor, the cost of doing nothing is far greater than the cost of taking action. But even before the Conservatives crashed the economy, no council in this country had the financial support that it needed to be able to deliver on the steps that need to be taken, as well as delivering the basic services that we all need for our residents. Now we face an even more difficult challenge, and it's never been clearer that we need a government which recognises the scale of this challenge, takes it seriously, and supports us to deliver upon our ambitions. What will now follow, following the agreement of this action plan, is a place-based prioritisation of the many actions to ensure that we achieve the maximum carbon savings and benefits as quickly as we can, as cost-effectively as we can. This place-based prioritisation process will involve the relevant stakeholders, members and residents, striving to ensure that the actions we prioritise also reflect our local communities and our places. It'll also mean that we have our fully evidenced business cases ready to go for every pot of funding that we can find to deliver maximum impact and investment here in Kirklees. An important element of the plan is that we prioritise both mitigation and adaptation equally, instead of a singular focus that can often be found towards emissions reductions only. This takes us ahead of the curve relative to many other authorities and will help our district adapt to the impacts of climate change that we know are already built in, as well as reducing our future impacts. Linked to this, I'm also pleased to confirm that we're participating in the Yorkshire and Humber Climate Commission's Local Authority Climate Adaptation Programme to further embed this element of climate action to ensure we're following best practice. So what comes next? We'll continue to develop and enhance Kirklees' climate emergency response, identifying our set of place-based high-priority commitments for carbon reduction and resilience building. This will result in the completion of business cases for those high-priority, evidence-led actions. We'll report back and publish a second iteration of this plan once this process is complete, with a set of actions that form firm commitments for initial delivery on top of our many ongoing actions which are outlined in the plan and will have a real impact in our communities. Mr Deputy Mayor, a low-carbon and resilient future is not and cannot be a preserve of the few. It's the right of everyone in Kirklees. It's our mission to ensure that the actions we promote are realistic, pragmatic, accessible and deliverable, so that everyone, regardless of their background, can live in a fairer, greener Kirklees. Colleagues, I urge you all to support this path to a low emission and resilient future and allow us to lead the way in addressing the challenge of our generation.
Thank you, Councillor Simpson. Is that seconded? Thank you. So, questions, comments? Councillor Cooper.
Hello, and just to be clear and to avoid accusations by Councillor Simpson that I'm making up my own facts, I'll only quote from the report that's in front of us today. I'll let it go eventually. When is a climate change action plan not a climate change action plan? I guess the answer is when it says it isn't. The report says the climate change action plan is not a list of firm commitments, investment proposals, or instructions at this point in the process. But it does set out detailed actions that can be taken by the Council, key partners and members of the wider community to help deliver the district's net zero climate ready target. Now, I don't know about you, but that does not sound like an action plan to me. And what consequences flow from the plan? For instance, costs, risks, legal implications, the report says. As this version of the Climate Change Action Plan is not a list of commitments and instructions at this stage of the process, there are no costs associated with its approval. Furthermore, it says, as this version of the Climate Change Action Plan is not a list of commitments and instructions at this stage of the process, there are no costs associated with its approval. Furthermore, it says that there are minimal risks associated with the publication of the plan due to the non-committal nature of the Climate Change Action Plan. And on legal implications, as the Climate Change Action Plan shown in Appendix 1 of this report is not a list of commitments and instructions, there are no broader legal implications in the approval of the plan. Now, I am disappointed that there are no implications from this report. I want the report to be consequential. I want it to be important. I want it to be substantial. I do the report a slight misservice as there is a risk identified. It says the core risk through the climate change action plans comes primarily from potential communication and publication of the documentation, specifically associated with a positive and negative response expected from the public and partner organisations such as the Kirklees Climate Commission. So when you're expecting a possibly poor response from your principal partner, the Kirklees Climate Commission, you've got to be asking yourself some serious questions as to why you've got in this place. The report goes on to say, a core focus of this criticism is expected to be around the non-committal nature of the Climate Change Action Plan. To combat this, we are striving to clearly communicate how the next steps in our action plan process will result in firm commitments once we've developed and identified through extensive resident and stakeholder engagement a refined number of high priority actions by place which will be accompanied by a business case providing indicative costs and carbon figures. In a strange way, I'm reassured by this report, reassured because I have heard certain cabinet members saying how we are one of the best councils in the country on addressing climate change. I tell you now, we are not, and recognising that is the first step towards improving. So I commend officers for their candour in the report and all the good work that they are actually doing. But I'd like a clear understanding from cabinet members of when we will have a real climate change action plan, given that we are nearly 4 years since the Council declared a climate emergency. I was a bit bemused by this statement in the report. Kirklees Council have and will continue to deliver a young person's climate festival, helping educate, inform and give young people a chance to get involved with the various environmental initiatives taking place across Kirklees. If there is one thing I'm really clear about is that most young people get climate change almost instinctively, as the future that we are just beginning to see is getting worse and the consequences of our actions are ones that they will experience acutely. Many are well informed and educate themselves. You do that when it is a threat to your future and your very survival. I think we need another festival to inform and educate ourselves as councillors, directors and heads of service. Why not go through a carbon literacy course so we properly understand the implications of decisions on future generations? In some ways, the most shocking part of the report was this statement at the end. Review by portfolio holders. Councillor Simpson, Green and Clean. Councillor Davis, Environment. And Councillor Mather, Corporate, were consulted and had no comments on the options or recommendations put forward in this report. What, nothing? Zilch? Nada? Arguably the most important document about what we are doing locally to address climate change, and our Kirklees cabinet members had nothing to say. Utterly shocking.
Councillor Lawson, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yes, we can see in the report how much work has gone into this. It is welcome after such a long wait after the declaration of the climate change emergency, which the Liberal Democrats supported at the time in 2019. So thanks for officers and for Will for bringing this forward. I'll limit my comments to one of the key areas of the documents, and that's the transport section on page 44 of the report. There's lots of good stuff there about working with WICA on public transport. That's in the 2.1.2 section. But I count that as work already in hand, which is good. You know, it's there and it's supposed to be there, and we're going to enhance it. So that is good. We talk as well, though, about the enhanced network. That bit is currently stalled, but I'll come back to that in a little while. I'm glad to see that planning makes an appearance in T1.3. Revisions are long overdue in planning and have been left rudderless on a national scale, with Mr Sunak wondering if to cop or not to cop, and being forced to capitulate on proposed house numbers recently. It seems like the dithering will continue while what's needed is a fundamental rethink. That shouldn't stop us making our own supplementary planning documents, though. Yes, there are limitations, but it sets a form of contract with the developers and the public. Build here, these are the rules. In a similar way to the social value SPDs set out recently, a new suite of environmental stipulations could be outlined to tailor development to our needs. Now, I understand that's a policy issue, but that needs to be done at pace, it needs to be done quickly, and we need to get that to have teeth. T2.1 talks about emissions, and this is the monster coming over the hill. I don't see anywhere in this section of reports anything about tyre wear and rubber erosion recognised as a pollutant or a carbon issue. And that's weird. It's weird because tests have shown that nearly 2,000 times more particulate pollution is caused by tyre wear than exhaust by modern cars. We know that the chemical composition of tyres is carcinogenic. We know that it gets in the air, in the water, and in the food chain. In an article published in June citing emissions analytics data, it cites milligrams of particles per kilometre of driving for new tyres as 73 milligrams, and an exhaust at the legal limit at 4.5 milligrams. Tackling idling, and this is idling, not transit, tackling idling cars is good, but it's working around the edges. It's an easy win, and I know why we're doing it. If we don't do it, then shame on us, but it is fiddling around the edges. So this administration needs to be doing proper lobbying through the LGA or through government directly to set tyre wear rates. Unbelievably, there aren't any at the moment. I found that staggering when I found that. The administration needs to be talking to WICA to get it to review the building of bigger roads. Perhaps the money that we handed back that we're going to discuss this week some of that can be redistributed even back for this work. The administration also needs to provide strong planning policy to protect our communities in places like Chidswell and the Amazon development in Cleckheaton from this waiting local health catastrophe, as well as serving our national and international ambitions and obligations for climate change. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'd like to add my thanks to Kat and the team also for this report and welcome them bringing it forward. I think it's probably difficult to do justice to a report like this in the 5 minutes that we get. I also tend to concur with Councillor Cooper on some things, that this isn't really a plan. It's probably better described as a statement of intent rather than a plan itself. A kind of list of aspirations and suggestions, but not at the stage yet where anything's nailed down or anything's ruled in or ruled out. One of my major concerns regarding this report is the lack of public engagement. When we look at it, just under 1,500 comments, or people commented, less than 1% of the population of Kirklees. less than half of 1%. We got more people signing petition that Councillor Davis brought forward for the Tolson Museum than commented on this. When we did the waste strategy, we had 7,500 people commenting on it. And yet, this is at a time when we've just had COP26. We brought everybody to Glasgow. Hardly a week goes by without the national news in some way talking about climate issues. And yet, somehow, we failed to engage the public. And when you look at those that did engage, it's predominantly in the more affluent districts. It's predominantly older and white, middle-aged people. It's probably not representative of the residents of Kirklees. This isn't the only example of where we've done public engagement, but we failed to engage the public. And my feeling on this is we haven't engaged the public on this. I don't understand why. I'm not going to criticise what's been done, but it doesn't feel as though we've reached people and people have engaged with it and responded. Even the numbers that have responded, there's a significant number that commented on Amazon or on Huddersfield Road trees, which suggests perhaps that they were brought to this by those campaigns, rather than a desire to engage with the broader picture on climate. A few comments, if I may. Electric vehicle charging. I don't understand why it isn't a priority to bring EV charging into areas that have little or no public transport, because surely they're the areas where we have to continue to use cars. I'm still waiting for 2, yes, all I'm being promised is 2 electric charging points in the whole of the Kirkburton ward. And I've been talking about this for probably a year now, but they still haven't happened. And this is one of the wards where we don't have that much public transport. Under carbon neutral, it tries to make the case, but I'm not convinced, that it reduce energy poverty. I understand why you might think that, but especially at a time when we're doing things like importing fracked gas from America to avoid us bringing forward our own sources of energy, it means we're in a global market, and I don't see how it will actually reduce energy poverty, because it will be global prices that drive that. Under the evaluation section in 2.25, it talks about Kirklees, let me say it properly, stakeholders. But I'm not sure who or how many have been involved and who determined who was a stakeholder, because the public response we got isn't a cross-section of the public. So were the stakeholders a cross-section of the public? And actually, the third bullet under 2.25, I've read it about 4 times and I still don't understand it. I understand the words individually, but you put them together as a statement and it makes absolutely no sense to me at all. And I wonder what the public would think if they read this. Again, I also agree, again, with Councillor Cooper. Dare I agree twice with him. On section 3.9 about children, describing young people as a vulnerable population group. I'm sure they are absolutely those that get it most, that are most willing to adapt and adopt changes, and I wouldn't have seen them as being a vulnerable group. I would have said the people that perhaps need the most help are the people my age and older, the older generation, that will probably find it more difficult to adapt, will find it more difficult to change because they're naturally reluctant, and also maybe ones who are struggling with adapting their property to being, better able to support climate. So I think we perhaps need to look again at how we define vulnerable groups and who actually we are focusing on and talking to. Just one final point, because I'm running out of time. It makes reference to climate change deniers. I think that's prejudicial language. I prefer to call them skeptics. We need to engage with these people. We need to understand why they won't engage with us. And using language like that is going to push them away rather than enable us to try and speak to them. I'll finish there. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Ramsey, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you, Will. Thank you, officers, for presenting and pulling together such a comprehensive document for us to consider. We've already discussed what an extremely important topic this is, and I am glad that we've got the opportunity to discuss it in this chamber. Clearly, our planet's equilibrium is being challenged. Greenhouse gases are rising. people of the world are experiencing huge difficulties with soaring temperatures, appalling droughts, out-of-control fires, rising sea levels, flooding, catastrophic storms, etc. Apparently, we're having a new coal mine that's just been approved, so we'll be burning some more fossil fuels. But it depends where you're coming from. But we've not just seen some of these things on the news, have we? We've started to experience, albeit to a lesser extent, water shortages, floods, moorland flowers, etc. here in Kirklees. I want to start by saying we should be celebrating this council's ambition, net zero by 2038, and we should be celebrating the progress that we've made today. I understand that we're on track with our plan, which is where we said we'd be, and we're on track with our delivery. As phase 1 comes to a close, we've overachieved on our target of 40%, 53.5% a year early. We have the lowest emissions, I understand, per head in West Yorkshire. It's fantastic that the council are owning this agenda and leading it, obviously alongside partners to ensure that that this is taken seriously across the whole of Kirklees. As we move into phase 2, I love the fact that we're lining up so many potential projects from the ideas that have been gathered through the first engagement phase. The engagement, I thought, was good. People clearly listened. I hope that we move forwards, when we move forwards, we'll ensure that we get views from the communities that haven't been vocal yet, and that we can prioritise some bespoke engagement with those sections of the public that may need some additional support to take part. As a Labour Council, we recognise that those who are struggling more in their day-to-day life find it harder to have their say. I'm sure it will pay dividends if populations like ours in Dewsbury feel more able to contribute their ideas. Whilst I said it was great to have projects in the pipeline being worked up ready to bid for funding, I must be honest, I absolutely hate the way the government expects us to do business as a council. Having to write bids for funds that are likely to be awarded to Tory areas is frustrating, to say the very least. I sincerely hope that we get the full funding that we deserve for this issue, rather than it getting channelled to the Leafy South. I can't wait until we've got a Labour government who see the urgent need to do something transformational about climate change, to deliver a stronger, green and digital future through their climate investment plan, investing in renewable energy, clean power, retrofitting houses, warm homes, and supporting public transport, to name but a few. Great work. Let's keep up the momentum.
Thank you. Colleagues, just to remind you that we'll be closing the list, so we're going to go try and get through some of the other items on the agenda that colleagues want to go through. Next is Councillor Butt.
We are the generation that sees and will continue to see the devastating effects of climate change, but we will be the generation that will have to do something about it if we are to leave our following generations a planet fit enough to inhabit. As President Macron says, there is no planet B. So it's great to see the work that colleagues have done to work towards achieving our own goals in Kirklees to minimise our contribution to this problem. And hence this action plan is very welcome, and I commend my colleagues for it. It's great to see 206 climate actions spanning 8 sectors, which includes partnering with other organisations and stakeholders to ensure cost-effectiveness in achievement and delivery. It's great to see overachievement on the previous targets and the attainment of 53.5% reduction on emissions a year early. So well done. Kirklees also has the lowest emissions per head in West Yorkshire, so another win. The planting of trees is vital in our fight to combat CO2 emissions. So the plans with the White Rose Forest Scheme to plant 7 million trees in West and North Yorkshire by 2025 is a giant leap in this direction. Everything about this plan goes towards ensuring our residents, our homes, our infrastructure are ready, educated, informed, and capable of thriving in the face of future challenges and changes. This action plan for Kirklees provides a clue as to the National Party's ambitions to establish new clean energy production where the power of the sun, wind and waves will deliver sustainable energy. The government must do more on the climate emergency, and with the breaking news a short while ago that the government has approved a new coal mine to open, this doesn't appear to be commensurate with a government that is serious about climate change. Now, we all know that the Prime Minister is wanting to come across as Mrs. Thatcher reborn. But she would turn in her grave at this U-turn, because this man is for turning. Finally, the message is loud and clear. If we do not step up and deliver now, the consequences will be catastrophic, and future generations will never forgive us. The Kirklees administration is delivering on its commitment to ensure our residents can live in cleaner, greener and healthier communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Smith.
Mr Deputy Mayor. Okay, can I just say that I believe Councillor Pinnock's name was before, and he seemed to have dropped away. I don't know whether...
His name is on the list. We'll deal with it here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. No huge sweeping political points from me, just a couple of practical things, I think. I broadly welcome the report. I welcome and thank the officers involved for putting together such a comprehensive document. It does seem to me, though, that there are hundreds and hundreds of opportunities to make little differences within our wards, and opportunities which are being missed. I could point to a couple of things in Lindley, if I may. Councillor Burke and I pushed quite hard, must be 3 years ago now, to get an air quality monitor installed outside one of our schools. Alongside that, we also pushed for signage and work with the schools to encourage anti-idling and good behaviour around our schools. The monitor appeared, we were thrilled. It was there, it disappeared. We had no feedback, no data, and it's been replaced with a little test tube which measures air quality over a period of weeks. That tells you nothing about what's happening with air quality around those peak times at drop-offs and pick-ups around our schools and the impact it has on our children. We also seem to, time and again, miss opportunities to improve, upgrade, add to opportunities for active travel through installing new pavements, joining up existing pavements, particularly when new housing developments are commissioned. There doesn't seem to be enough thought given to how people from those new estates are going to walk to other places. We end up with pavements that go to nowhere. We have paths all over the ward and all over Kirklees which are unusable by people who are not good on their feet. You know, we need to encourage more of that. We need to get the basics right and get your ward councillors involved, and let's deal with some of this low-hanging fruit, if you will. I could point to a dozen or more little opportunities where we don't seem to get the support, or we seem to get the support and it's not followed through. And I just encourage the Cabinet and encourage officers to work with ward councillors so that we can tackle not just the big things, but the little things that matter to people on the ground as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Hawkins, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And I'll get to the sweeping political statements yourself a little further on. But I want to start by thanking Councillor Simpson for his presentation. It's clear that Kirklees is leading the way in responding to the climate emergency. An over 50% reduction in emissions, the lowest emissions per head in West Yorkshire, and investment and innovation across every part of this council to meet our climate commitments. This plan and the actions within it are testament to the hard work and commitment of council officers, and I would ask him to pass all of our thanks on to those officers for their tireless work. The consequences of the climate crisis will be disastrous, not just for those in the developing world, but for global superpowers. You aptly put the cost of doing nothing is far higher than the cost of action today. But we should all be aware of the economic realities we are currently facing. And whilst we need urgent and bold action, which the action plan does outline, we cannot indulge in fantasies and write cheques we cannot cash. I can't help but come to the same conclusion I've heard over the past few months in this council. We need national government to take the lead for a change. But with the announcement of a coal mine in the UK being initiated after COP26 consigned call to the history books, that leadership is clearly not going to come from national government. And as Councillor Ramsey said, it does depend where you're coming from. If you're coming from Victorian Britain or a party of the past like our colleagues over there, then you'll think that is a great thing. But we need better. Parties of the future will look at that and think we need to do more, take a more active approach to green energy and the green jobs of the future, not going to the past to call again. We need proper funding for local government to allow us to provide services to residents, but also to take Kirklees further into that green future that I'm talking about. Lives are at stake, and on this, we cannot afford to fail. Thank you all.
I'll take Councillor Andrew Pinnock.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. I'm just going to talk about trees because it's something that is a great interest of mine, and it does also happen to be very important for any policy that you care to develop in relation to climate change. Now, there's a lot of publicity given to planting lots and lots of trees. But the point I made when I was in the Climate Change Working Party was, it's all very well planting lots and lots of trees, but what happens afterwards? Quite a lot of planted trees will die, and you've got to have a proper management plan to ensure that the trees that are planted do actually thrive and do well. Now, some of this is not up to the council, but I think the council should be doing all it can to encourage a lot of tree planting. In fact, one of the points in the report does talk about exploring opportunities for small-scale woodland establishment. But it's more than that. Somehow or other, we have to encourage people into the belief that trees will do a better job if they're allowed to regenerate themselves. It's no good relying on planting more trees. The regenerated ones will be much healthier, and you will have, in some cases, a complete natural environment in that area. So, what I'm trying to say is that there are lots of things that can contribute to that, including the planning system, because maybe we should be encouraging people to put in planning applications to plant woodlands. And I think that would be a great benefit. The other thing is that along with a lot more trees, possibly goes a woodland economy. Anybody who's travelled in France or Germany will see piles of logs all over the place, where people are making use of the natural resources of their local area. You do see that in some parts of this country, but not an awful lot. Now, I come from Surrey, where there are far more trees than there are up here. I know the climate is slightly different, but we can do the same. And I think that although I'm very pleased at the points where in the report it does talk about allowing that the regeneration of our natural environment to happen, I think it needs to be a bit stronger, and making sure that we appreciate what trees can actually do, and giving them the best environment to thrive and produce a better overall result. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Deputy.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson, please.
Thank you, Deputy Chair. Just a few things that I noticed on the plan that might need to be added or even taken out. And a few of them are dichotomies and a few of them are checks and balances. What I've noticed with the plan, it's fairly leaning one-sided as far as on a very positive note, but obviously there has to be another angle, another perspective on any plan, and that's the what-ifs. So I just wanted to point out a couple of things that I noticed. One was reference to solar energy and wind turbines. Just wondered if we'd got any results, tests, any figures to put into the plan reference to, let's just say, wind turbines that have been proven will never be carbon neutral as long as they're running in their lifespan. And the other is pointing towards China. I just wondered if we knew in the plan or we were looking at it for the future of where any solar panels come from that will be coming into the borough. As some of you will probably know that's done the research on this type of energy, that 80% of the world's solar panels are produced in China. And most of those are from forced labour camps. So I just wondered if we were just looking at the checks and balances as far as where people in Kirklees were getting the solar panels from and where our solar panels were being sourced from, to make sure that not only are we looking at energy, but we're also looking at ethics as far as where this energy and where these panels are being produced. The next is power stations, and again pointing towards China. It's quite noble of a small borough like Kirklees to be doing what we think is right as far as climate's concerned. But then you look at the superpowers around the world, and China in particular, who at this moment in time have got over 2,200 coal-fired power stations and producing and building another 12 to 20 coal-fired power stations per annum. They use in 12 days the carbon emissions that the whole of this country, the UK, not just this country, use in a year. So we have to put into perspective the amount of money, time, effort that we're putting into this climate catastrophe, because we will have little, if any, impact globally on whatever we do in this borough. So we have to look at the checks and balances about what we're doing and the implications that we're passing on to our residents as far as costs concerned. So that was one of the other things on checks and balances that I'd like to mention. The other thing is, as far as climate and changes in weather, I don't know if you've ever spoken to the climate officers in the borough, which I have several times. There is very little impact on weather from climate change. So all the catastrophes that you're talking about, wildfires and floods, etc., has got little, if anything, to do with climate change. So that's another thing that we need to be... Okay, well, just read up on it and come back to me and speak to the climate officers. But I had this very discussion with them, and they agreed that it had very little to do with weather change as far as climate change is concerned. The other thing is, what I did notice, and I guess to my embarrassment, the only thing that I'm an expert on is diet and nutrition. It's the only qualification I've got ever in my 40 plus years of, 50 years nearly now of leaving school. Obviously maths wasn't a good subject either. But when we're advocating in a borough's plan to push vegetarian and veganism, especially on the children, we've got to be very, very careful. And I can say with experience and expertise that it's not a very good thing to advocate as far as children are concerned, to go vegan in particular. So I've been vegan, I've been vegetarian for 12 years of my life, and I'm also an expert in nutrition. I'm saying that that kind of thing should be left to experts and not put into a plan from people that know very little about nutrition.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you.
Councillor Smedge, please.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. Can I ask timescales? This action plan has 3 timescales: short-term, medium-term and long-term. Well, what years is short-term, what years is medium? You've got an end date, 2038, but when does short-term become medium-term and medium-term become long-term and things like that? It seems very open-ended and very difficult to be able to say, yes, we have achieved those outcomes within that short-term time frame, or yes, we have achieved those outcomes within that medium-term time frame. There's very little in there that you can assess. Can I ask as well about, on page 81 of the papers, you're talking about travel training for all school children across Kirklees. One of the things that many people would like are school crossing patrols to help keep the children safe when crossing roads. But we have vacancies across the board for school crossing patrols. And we have a number of vacancies in our ward. But it would seem that we put out a generic advert for school crossing patrols across Kirklees, and Kirklees schools cannot have funds from the council to be able to look for innovative ways of providing that school crossing patrol. And I think maybe we should have some discussions as to how we can move that forward, but in a safe way for our youngsters, so we don't compromise on safety. I think that is something that we ought to explore. And I've looked at the transport section, and forgive me if I've missed it, but we don't say that we're working with national highways, yet the M62 is very prevalent in a lot of people's lives, and the effects of the M62. We're putting more vehicles on the roads, more vehicles on the M62, but we're not talking about the impacts of the motorway and the impacts on the roads when vehicles come off the motorway because it is blocked and block local roads. And for some of us, our air quality is impacted on the effects of the M62, but I haven't seen it in here. And can I ask as well, because I was curious, you say, considering collaborating with neighbouring districts such as Calderdale, brilliant, on the potential for park and ride schemes to large urban centres such as Huddersfield and Dewsbury. Could I ask where in Calderdale you're going to have a park and ride for Dewsbury? Because that doesn't seem to make sense at all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smedge. Councillor Hussain.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Is this working? Yep, sorry. So thank you, Councillor Will Simpson, officers and frontline staff for the report and any efforts in tackling climate change. And without hesitation, I'm pleased to note that the Climate Change Action Plan continues to be a priority. I just want to make a few comments I've picked up by Councillor Mark Thompson about climate change and the fact that it doesn't affect the weather. I don't know if he's read any research articles lately, or any current ones, but academic research highlights the importance and the impact of climate initiative and its ability to mitigate climate change issues, saving energy and costs. Therefore, it was prudent to be led by renowned climate studies at the Tyndall Centre for Climate Change and Research, which shaped our mission's pathway and informs our priorities and actions. And while the independent CDP, Carbon Disclosure Project, guides us to comply with international best practice. Therefore, I was pleased to know that we are scientific evidence-led and best practice approach-led on our climate change and action plan. It was also great to note some of the achievements in Phase 1 that Councillor Will Simpson highlighted. In terms of council buildings and schools, we cut our carbon usage by 17,250 tonnes per year and sourcing 100% of our energy from renewable sources. And obviously we're all aware of the cost of living crisis, and one of the many major contributing factors are the hike in energy bills. Again, we launched our leading retrofitting pilot scheme. 75% carbon savings were made for tenants in those properties, and that's saving them hundreds a year on their bills. Regarding the environment and planting tens of thousands of trees, which again was mentioned. Streets and road, we've invested, as the presentation said, £7 million in vehicle fleets to convert electric and low-emission vehicles. We're all aware for the need for better air quality to help improve respiratory and general health, but also putting in the infrastructure and investing in electric vehicle charging points. And it's not whilst we want to try and achieve this as quickly as possible, it is a journey, right? We also have converted 97% of our streetlights to LEDs. So currently on council emission reduction, I noted we also achieved 53.5% a year early. We overachieved from our previous target of 40%. That is a huge increase, and well done to the team for that. This is only for the council, but I also welcome the idea that these new targets will include the whole of the borough. We not only have the lowest emissions per head in West Yorkshire, as a council, we achieved a grade B in this year's assessment, improving on last year's results. And that put Kirklees above the regional and global averages. And that was given to us by the CDP, who is an independent body. So phase 1 so far has delivered a significant number of projects and achieved a significant number of planned objectives, alongside working with local partners, businesses and residents with help and support of national and regional partners. And a few members mentioned a couple of things. I want to just highlight them as well. In terms of full business cases are needed, we can't put them all in the plan. Example, the heat district network. The business cases are absolutely huge for that. In terms of the Kirklees Council, offering carbon literacy training internally, and obviously the Youth Festival is signing people up to eco-schools as well. So while it may be viewed as ambitious, it remains a fantastic opportunity to be greener, improve health, create sustainability, and overall improve a quality of life and a borough that is fairer for everyone. And on that note, I fully support this phase 2 ambition for Kirklees to continue moving forward on its pathway to net zero and climate ready by 2038. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Marchington, please.
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Mayor. I think lots of people said thank you to the amount of work that's been put in on this, and I think it is, and it's a very impressive document. But there is a lot of statement of intent, and just having looked through the 206 Act, there's a lot of consider, we'll think about this. And so, yeah, action plan is an action plan. A lot of us spent a lot of time on the Climate Commission. There's a few things that could have been done. And I'm not going to say we're going to miss the boat, but stuff we could have been doing and can be doing now in anticipation of some of the other good structural stuff that's taking place. I mean, 4 times it's been mentioned that we've got the lowest carbon emissions per head of population in West Yorkshire. Well, I think that's because 12, 14 years ago, this council invested £20 million in visiting every single house in the borough, providing them with insulation where suitable. And there are all sorts of other consequential benefits, checks, safety checks, all of that. We developed skills and everything. So Kirklees was a national leader in all of this. That's had benefits. It's saved residents thousands of pounds per household since then. It's a pity that wasn't replicated. I know that Philip Webber did talk to other authorities. I know it's become national party policy for some of the parties. It would cost, between £5 and £6 billion to replicate that across the whole of the country, the whole of the UK. It's not been done, and it should be. And of course, they wouldn't need to do that in Kirklees because we've done it, and we could actually go through some of the sums we want to do, the next step stuff. So there's missed opportunities. Yeah, and we do need action, and there's things we could do now. I go to other authorities where they're not doing pilot, but so Norwich, 200 passive house, social housing, it's just done. And we're fiddling with pilots. If you don't, we could go to Norwich, we could copy the plan, we could find a bit of land where it works, and that would 200 people who could potentially fuel poverty or financial poverty could be living in excellent quality houses with minimal or no energy costs. My wife and I visited a friend. The local authority procured solar panels for everybody in the, offered. Would you like us to do that for you? It cost a fraction of what my son did. He's paying for it out of his own money. And that's done. There's lots of things that are happening, and they could be happening now at little or no cost to Kirklees. I know, there were lots of warm words spoken about the photovoltaic battery scheme that we proposed in this year's budget, the Liberal Democrat amendment. It could have been done at no cost to the council. It could be done through HRA. We could have actually, the amount saved by residents, it could have been done. And we could have started that, and if we'd have followed it through, there'd be 2,000 residents, households, who would have significant reductions in their energy costs. And if we'd done it then, we could have funded it at the then low rates of Public Work Loan Board, we could have recouped the costs, and actually given what's happened to fuel prices, both gas and electricity, particularly electricity, it would have made a massive difference, and we could have done that. So warm words were spoken, but because it wasn't, it's somebody else's idea, it wasn't followed through. And I just get a little bit fed, we suggest things, warm words are spoken, but they're not followed through. And even when it's little or nil cost to the council. And just picking up what Mark Thompson said, there is a distinction between climate and weather. Britain, because we're an island on the eastern side of the Atlantic, it's very difficult. But we've had, 9 of the warmest years ever on record in the last 10 years. This last November was the warmest since records began. That's helped with our gas bill, but it's worrying if that, we know there's going to be other consequences from that. So and it is complicated, but we know that what the evidence says. And in terms of the funding, I agree that things, we need to be careful about the resources we use, and there is a cost. There's nothing free. It costs something, whether that's producing things in China. We could have potentially worked with European partners to build a local solar panel industry. Denmark is a world leader in wind generation, and I understand a lot of the original technology came from stuff that happened in Britain, but we weren't keen on it. And the worst one is about wave, energy produced from wave, and anyway, that's another story. It's just appalling. So, yeah, we do appreciate the work. It is a good statement of intent, but we do need more actions. There's things we could be doing now at little or no cost to the council, particularly through better procurement. And some of that would be encouraging while we wait for some of the planned, longer-term stuff to kick in.
Thank you very much, Councillor Marchington. Councillor Bolt, please.
Just picking up on a point that Andrew rightly raised there about the previous Kirklees successes, when that wonderful scheme when every house was offered the opportunity to be insulated. I think from memory that was that called Warm Zone that we did in Kirklees. And again, thinking from memory, I'm looking around, colleagues may not remember, that was done probably from about 2006 onwards. And again, thinking from memory, who was running the council at that time? It wasn't you, and it wasn't you, it was the Conservatives who ran it. So when you're castigating the Conservatives, as the backbenchers have done, one of the most successful schemes was done under a Conservative administration with Green support, Andrew. But let's get it in right. So we're looking at this now. One of the key strands to reduce emissions and achieve the targets is within the transport sector. And that's been mentioned by colleagues before. But we'll look at some of the key challenges that the Cabinet have identified. One of them...
Thank you. Councillor Lawson.
Sorry, Mr Mayor. On a point of order,
I've turned your microphone off, so it's not been picked up. Councillor Lawson, speak.
It's illegal. It's not against the
Lock me up if it's illegal.
The personal explanation refers to something where the speaker has been misunderstood. She hasn't spoken, she hasn't been misunderstood.
Yes.
Thank you, very well sped. Keep to the truth, please, Councillor Bowles.
as you're supposed to do. In 2006, it was a Conservative administration. The coalition came from about 2008, 2009, when you really stuffed up building schools for the future, if we're keeping to the truth. We lost the funding that was available for that. But, Mr Mayor, we're talking about key challenges. We're talking about what we're doing for... Yeah.
Point of order, Councillor Cooper.
That's great. The reason that Kirklees Warm Zone, the free installation scheme, was free was because of the Green Party amendment to the budget in 2007. That's what made it different from other warm zones in the country, and that was why it was the national winner of the Ashton Awards, the Sustainability Awards, which made it a national leader. And so it was the Green Group that put forward this proposal, and it was us who did it, and that's the only group on the council that voted against it was the Labour group.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. So you're all kind of right, and you're all loving the warm zone. It's a shame it's just not warm in here this evening. Councillor Bolt.
I did mention that, but right. So going back to what we're talking about now, the challenges facing the future, it's identified in here that one of the key challenges for achieving reductions in the targets is a lack of infrastructure in Kirklees for transport. Yet, Mr Mayor, in circa 2000, when we completed the Spen Valley Greenway, we had an independent scrutiny review which praised it. It was done by people who weren't involved, Mike Bowers and others, and he said that this should be the model. We should be converting former railway lines because they would then get away from the other challenge that we see about topography and everything else. Yet Kirklees has procrastinated for years and not delivered on that. We don't have a cohesive active travel network, Mr Mayor. We have disparate little bits that are not connected. There's a damning statement in here as well, Mr Mayor, from the Cabinet, that cycling is unsafe on most of Kirklees roads. If I was the Cabinet member for transport, or if I was the leader, and it said cycling is unsafe on most Kirklees roads, I'd be very concerned, Mr Mayor, because who's responsible for the statutory duty of road safety? It's the council. So that's one of the things they need to be looking at. Again, we referred to European awards. Kirklees won the European Greenways Award in 2007 for the infrastructure. It was active travel because it was accessible greenways. So it isn't as if they're having to invent ways to do it. Just do what others have done and carry on doing it successfully like we did. The former use of railway lines would then, such as the Heckmond-White Ringway, which over a year ago, in a Cabinet meeting, when Heckmond-White was given £1.5 million with no strings attached, and I think Steve's gone now, but Steve Hall, just before his election, said, "That can sleep soundly in their bed, we're already on with this." What we're hearing now from residents in Heckmond-White is that the residents are being told they've got to come forward with ideas and funding to deliver something which the council and the mayor should already have been doing, Mr Mayor, the Mayor of West Yorkshire. So it's a damning... No, it isn't rubbish. Active travel... Well, very good. That's what they're being said. So we're seeing that it's a cop-out. Topography, Mr Mayor, rears its head when it's easy to blame something. But if we look at the illustration that's been used in the document, it's an e-bike, yes? And I pay tribute to Councillor Marchington, who is a good advocate of e-bikes living in a hilly place. So I don't suppose you find the topography too challenging on an e-bike. And so we're showing them that it can be done. The challenge as well should be, Kirklees should be leading by example. Years ago, Kirklees used to have a bicycle user group, and it used to put in place measures for supporting staff. I'm told by many staff now that changing facilities, storage facilities are lacking. I would encourage anybody to go and have a look at our neighbour, Leeds, and see what facilities they've got in the basement of Merrion House, where you've got lockers, drying rooms and secure storage. They're not asking them to leave bikes in the middle of Civic 3 quadrangle, anything like that. So the schemes are out there. We should be looking at what people are doing, and we should be improving on it. We should be looking at infrastructure, again, as it's mentioned, so that
as was said when the Cooper Bridge scheme went through scrutiny, it fails to comply with Government Directive LTN 120 and gear change on promoting active travel. Why? So the other thing, let's look at some actions. It says in T37, modal shift, but it says the action owners are the community. But if you have already admitted that your roads are unsafe, how can the community be the ones that are driving that action? The first action to improve modal shift is for the council to make the roads safe. It also refers on T51 to mass transit, which may also be a threat to these targets because one of the routes that's being considered for MRT is the Spen Valley Greenway, and therefore you have the dichotomy. If you're moving mass rapid transit onto the former rail corridor, the thousands of people who use the Greenway network will be relocated probably onto the roads. So we've got lots of other things like water and flood risk, but it doesn't mention natural flood management. It says things are expensive, but again, look at Calderdale. What the volunteers have done there with natural flood management is not expensive. I'll leave it there, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bolt. Councillor Watson, please. Could you just press your button again, please?
Is that better? Thank you. We've heard a lot of stuff tonight. A lot of catastrophising, a lot of hyperbole about how the end of the world is nigh if we don't do something, how we're all doomed. And I'm starting to worry that we're suffering a little bit from perhaps some form of corporate herd psychosis or even Stockholm syndrome. Whenever we have these kind of debates, people get very emotional about it. They get very involved. They get very passionate. And they talk about all these doomsday scenarios that we're facing. Emergencies, climate emergencies and things like that. But at the end of the day, I would suggest that it's better to look at facts rather than to rely on the emotion. And what we have here, so let's look at some facts. What we have here is that we know as a fact that 1,499 people in Kirklees were interested in this. Yeah? That means there are a lot of people in Kirklees who had no interest whatsoever in this. Okay? Now, that works out at about an average of 45 per ward. And what is clear from tonight is that this council is devoting massive resources, time, effort, energy, cash, officer time, at a time when all we hear about is that the council is struggling financially with resources and so forth. So what we're doing is we're devoting massive amounts of resources to something that on average 45 people in each ward can be bothered with. So that's out of what? There's about 400,000 people in the borough. So what's going wrong here? We're all sat in this chamber, panicking, wetting ourselves about the end of the world. And the people out in Kirklees are not bothered. If they were, they'd be engaging in this. They'd be connecting with us. Now, what they are bothered about is their bins. They're bothered about gritting in winter. They're bothered about speed limits, as I raised with the mayor before. I get a lot of traffic about that kind of stuff, but none of this. And I think what we need to do is we need to take a step back here and lighten up a bit even. Because at the end of the day, the people of Kirklees don't seem to be worried that the world's going to end. It's just the people in here that seem to be worried. So I'm picking up a point that Councillor Thompson said, and I say this every time we have this kind of debate. We can turn Kirklees off. We can shut Kirklees down. We can sit in the dark and the cold, and it will make not one iota of difference. The reality of the situation is that we are devoting all this time, effort, emotion, and resource to this kind of work, and it will not make one iota of difference. The Chinese will keep building their power stations, they'll keep burning fuel as they are doing. What we could do is we could devote all those resources to something that will actually improve things for people in Kirklees. I changed tack slightly, picking up Councillor Butt's comment about the Prime Minister. A wholly outrageous and unjustified comment to suggest that the Prime Minister is trying to emulate Margaret Thatcher. Outrageous. Not true, unfortunately. What you could have said, and I would have been absolutely forced to agree with you, and it's a shame you didn't, is that he's trying to emulate Mr. Blair. If you want to have a go at our government, Do not pick on the Prime Minister. That's a cheap shot. There's so much that you can have a go about. Incompetence, vacillation, lack of a mandate. That's where you should be going. You, Councillor, need to up your game. OK? Now, in relation to the issue of coal mining that was raised by Councillor Ramsey over there. Well done, thank you. Let's look at the facts again, though. The coal mine in Cumbria is to produce coal for the steel industry. We need industry in this country. We need to be independent. We need that coal. There's no point in shipping it from around the world to fire furnaces in Sheffield. So congratulations to Mr Gove. For once, this government has actually done something right, and they have backed the coal mine off the Cumbria coast. That is the right decision. It's not for burning in power stations, but that brings me back to my point about facts. When we talk about facts, let's be right. That coal mine is not there for power stations. So, in my view, that's what we should be focusing on. Getting things right, dealing with the facts. Because the people of this borough really don't seem that interested in what we've been talking about tonight, I'm afraid. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillor Pandor. And then we'll go to Councillor Simpson for right to reply.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. I'll try and up my game, Mr Deputy Mayor, by trying to actually respond to what Councillor Watson said. Not all of it, but one of the things he said was the people out there are not connected. And I agree with you. There's a big job to do. And that's why this subject has been talked about for decades. And if it was so easy, we'd have actually done what we should be doing. But it's a fact. Climate change is taking place. Everybody will say it is taking place. But the trick is, how do we actually make sure that we actually go through that paradigm shift to make people understand that is actually a real issue? And that's what I want to touch on, Mr Mayor. Coming back home, our young people, who are the future, were part of an engagement exercise in early 2021 during the lockdown. And there was an online climate festival that took place. And they did engage really, really well. And because it was so successful, we had a young people's climate festival that took place after the lockdown. And we had two fantastic events that took place, one in Kirklees College and the other one in the Al Hikmah Centre in North Kirklees, where Kim Leadbeater came and spoke to the young people. And there were 20 schools, both primary and secondary schools, that took part in that exercise. And it was brilliant because the way they exchanged ideas, the way they shared the networks, and the way they brought ideas in terms of what needs to be done was fantastic. And that is consultation that you can never, ever appreciate and quantify, because it's all quality information, and they are the ones who will actually be the pioneers to actually address the climate emergency. Because it's very, very difficult for people like myself and yourself, Councillor Watson, and others, to actually start to actually take this and move it forward. And that's why I think there's hope for younger generations. And that's where Keep Britain Tidy has actually stepped up and working with our schools to develop eco-schools. And a lot of schools have been asked to register, and I think a lot of them are getting registered. Because unless you actually get that mass movement taking place with the younger generations, we're going to hit that brick wall. And once a school does actually achieve the criteria, what they can become is eco-schools, and they get an award from Keep Britain Tidy, and that is something that our young people will be proud of. So although there's a lot of comments that have come forward, I don't share the same feelings and the facts and the values that the Conservative group are coming out with. I understand that, but at the same time, we have a job to do, Mr Mayor, Mr Deputy Mayor. And I'm really, really proud that we have got a climate action plan that will now take this thing forward. I appreciate that there are challenges ahead, and that's why I was really, really pleased when Sir Keir Starmer said that we will create a GB energy company that will actually put real resources behind what we're doing. And maybe then we can actually have something that goes beyond the warm zones, and then we can then say that it was actually a Labour government who actually made sure that nationally we had a clear strategy, a plan, and resources that goes with it. So thank you, Mr Mayor. Deputy Mayor. Sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Pandor. Right of reply, Councillor Simpson.
Thank you very much, Mr Deputy Mayor. Thank you to all colleagues for their contributions this evening. Some of them very interesting indeed. I have listened to everyone and appreciate everyone's comments. I will try to respond to as many of them as I can now that I was able to note down whilst you were speaking. I won't be able to get around you all, but please do be reassured that I was listening. Just have to make a quick comment on the Cumbrian coal mine to correct some inaccuracies. UK steelmakers have already rejected using the coal from the Cumbrian mine because the steel industry is turning to lower carbon steel making techniques such as electric arc furnaces, and it's already been said that 83% of the coal produced from the mine is for export. So thank God this plan is scientific and evidence-led rather than by the comments that we've heard from a small number of members tonight. Councillor Taylor, the Kirklees charges, thank you for your advocacy of them in your ward. I know you've spoken to the team about them quite a bit. 2 EV charges for Kirklees is just the start. 2 are being done, which we chose 2 because this kept it below the procurement threshold that would have resulted in further delay to delivery. We know there have been delays, but it's progressing as quickly as possible, and I know that officers have been speaking with you and will continue to speak with you. And if you have any issues, you can always engage with me directly. You also made the point about engagement, which was also made by Councillor Ramsey, and I'm very grateful for that. And as you can see from the action plan, the engagements are going to continue. So I take those comments on board. Councillor Smith and Councillor Lawson, thank you for your comments. Particularly the one, John, about you were both talking about, I think, air quality. John, you talked about particulates from tyres. That isn't covered directly in the action plan because the climate change action plan is about carbon emissions reduction. But of course, pollution, particulates, air quality are incredibly important. That's why we have our broader environmental sustainability strategy, because that's about all elements of environmental sustainability. We also have, as you'll know, our statutory air quality action plans each year. So the issues that you've raised are important and will be picked up going forward through both of those avenues. Councillor Pinnock made a fantastic point about tree planting and management. The White Rose Forest are leading on most of the planting, and they're doing excellent work, which of course we help lead on as the accountable authority, and they're building capacity, as you've alluded to, Councillor Pinnock, in building support for establishment and management. But we had a really interesting contribution from my colleague Councillor McLaughlin just a couple of days ago, who informed my colleagues in the Labour group about issues that small groups of volunteers are having, which is holding back planting as a result of new government directives around having assessments for small sites when you're using publicly funded trees, such as if you get them through the Woodland Trust. And that's causing significant issues, which has resulted in thousands, if not tens of thousands of trees not going in the ground in Kirklees alone that could have been going in. And that's sort of a really important point that I wasn't aware of previously, and it's things like that that we need to take forward. So I take on board what you were saying, Councillor Pinnock. Councillor Smage, you talked about timescales. They're on page 22, and the timescales are 0 to 5 years, 5 to 10 years, and 10 plus years. Councillor Thompson, your point about procurement, we look at the carbon impact for the full lifespan, including manufacture, and for example, if it was an EV, we include, obviously you've got to mine for the things that are included in the batteries. All of that and the carbon impact of all of that is taken into account when we engage in procurement, so that we know that we are making a real carbon saving. And your point about ethics is a wider point about the procurement strategy, but we do engage in ethical procurement as well. Colleagues, this is an action plan, and it's one that we can be proud of. And it's the next step in our journey, of course, laying out the long list of possible actions that can be taken to help reduce emissions and increase resilience within Kirklees. We do need to prioritise them. We need to make sure we do them in a way that has maximum impact as soon as we can, in a way that is most cost effective. This is an action plan, not a collection of business cases, because that will be huge. The H10 business case, as has been mentioned by one of my colleagues, itself is longer than most council reports. So we can't bring forward over 200 business cases right now. The next step through stakeholder engagement is to ask residents, organisations, you as members, businesses to prioritise these actions and help that they ensure they best reflect our communities and our places, and then delve into more detail on the potential carbon reductions and cost to make sure that we take the most impactful and effective action first. It's at this point then we will be making firm financial commitments to particular actions for delivery. Mr Deputy Mayor, I wish to close the debate in the same way that I close my opening comments. A low-carbon future can't be the preserve of the few. It's the right of all of us, everyone in Kirklees. It's our mission to ensure that the actions we promote are realistic, pragmatic, accessible and deliverable, so that everyone, regardless of their background, can live in a fairer, greener Kirklees. That's the work we will undertake. That is what this administration will deliver.
Thank you, Councillor Simpson. We'll now go to the vote by show of hands. All those for? Thank you. Against? Abstain? Thank you. That is carried. Item 9, page 187, proposed change of date of Budget Council meeting 2023. This is reference from Corporate Governance and Audit Committee. Councillor Hussain.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. The Corporate Governance and Audit unanimously agreed to changing the date of the Budget Council meeting. Members will note from the report that the reasons for changing the date relate to particular economic circumstances of this financial year, the delayed autumn statement and the lateness of receiving the financial settlement. Delaying the budget meeting will be helpful for officers and members to both have more time to consider the impact of the current challenging conditions to prepare the draft budget. I therefore move that 1. The date of the Council's budget meeting to be changed from 22nd of February to 8th of March 2023. Point 2. The meeting of Council on 15th of March 2023 to be cancelled. Point 3. The meeting on 11th of January 2023 be a holding executive to account meeting. And point 4, the meeting on 22nd of February 2023 be a key discussion.
Thank you, Councillor Hussain. Is that seconded? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
No. Any comments? No? Okay, we'll go to the vote. All those for? No. No, hold on. We'll go back. There was a comment. Apologies. Councillor Lawson. Thank you. Draw the information. Okay, again, colleagues, all for? Against? It was a slow hand, Councillor Cooper, was it? Yeah, okay. Abstain? No. Okay, thank you. It's carried. Item 10, written questions to the Leader, Cabinet Members, Chairs of Committees and nominated spokespersons. Put a light on there for me. A written schedule of submitted questions has been circulated. I will now invite members to ask their questions in turn. The appropriate member will then respond. One supplementary question to each submitted question is permitted, and this meeting will finish at 9 o'clock, so depending on responses, we'll get through as many as we can. Councillor McGuinn.
I know the answer already because my wife's been
Thank
to the
you.
library.
You're still asking it?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I thought you
Just get on with it then. Thank you very much, Councillor Watson. Can you confirm the use of Civic Centre 3 and the Old Argus building on Victoria Lane as a split venue for the library service?
Yes.
Thank you. Supplementary.
for one-to-one interviews. I've been told by a manager there that at this particular time in the climate, when we're going through a crisis, that people who are wanting to see officers to have face-to-face interviews space is going to be severely cut from 19 meeting places to 7. And I didn't realise you were going to answer this, Paul. So the second part of the question was, can you comment on possibly Will can come in on here, will all the books that are currently in the library go into the new library, go into the temporary library, and the archives, which are now stored, I believe, in the market hall, what will happen to those?
Councillor Davis, you can choose which supplementary you want to answer.
I think he's being funny. I just following the Carl Burke question time.
Oh, there we go. Which one do I pick? I'll try a bit of both. I'm not aware of a loss of space. In fact, from my perspective, moving the library in there is going to help us in terms of connecting some of our citizens with services. So part of the plan is, as we do in other libraries, is to ensure that when people come in, that there's a safe space for them and they feel comfortable in talking to officers about some of the services they can access. However, I will look into that, Bernard. It's something, as I say, at this point I'm not aware of, so I'll talk that through with the library service. Again, on the details of the books and the archives, certainly there are plans in place to make sure that the archives are stored appropriately. Once more, I've not got that detail at this stage, but very happy to get those details for you in precisely how that will be done.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Next question, question 2, Councillor McGuinn.
Is there a timetable now for creating the museum in what is now the Huddersfield Library building?
Thank you, Councillor Simpson.
Thank you very much, Councillor McGuinn, for your question. This would have been answered by Councillor Turner if he was here, but he's not well, so I'm afraid you're stuck with me again. The current Huddersfield Town Centre Library will relocate in early January to the Customer Service Centre in Civic 3. Once the building is emptied, intrusive survey work will take place, lasting several months. This work will help to inform the construction timetable for our new museum, and we will be sure to inform members of these timescales once we can do so with certainty.
Thank you, Councillor Simpson. Supplementary, Councillor McGuinn.
I realise this is probably Councillor Turner's remit, but the art gallery was closed years ago for repairs. Has any work been done on the roof, for example, in the last few years on that? And are there any estimates for getting the library building ready for, costs of getting it ready for the new museum? Are there any estimates?
Councillor Simpson, the same applies. You can choose your supplementary.
I'm feeling generous today, so I'll try my best on all of it. It's my understanding that, yes, I believe some work has been done, but of course that it's not entirely my portfolio, so I will leave others to confirm that for you and get back to you. But as I said, to the second part of your question, it's impossible to give a timescale with confidence until we've been able to undertake all of that survey work that needs to be done. So, of course, as I said in response to the initial question, we'll make sure that that survey work happens. We'll have the best possible information. We'll establish our timescales, and then once we know that with confidence, we'll be certain to share it with members and make sure that you know those as well.
Thank you. Question 3, Councillor McGuinn.
Okay, Councillor Davis. Will the council be moving to secure the Ravensnow building as an asset open to the public if or when the Tulsa Museum moves to the library building in the town centre?
Thanks once more, and long time since we spoke. No, we will indeed. The building is a fantastic asset for the people of Kirklees, and there, our commitment, and in fact there is a legal commitment in terms of covenants, as you probably know, associated with the buildings, is that we will absolutely ensure that we retain it for the uses that are laid out within those covenants and benefit our residents. As we move towards the delivery phases of the Cultural Heart programme over the coming years, we will be talking to our communities, we'll be talking to ward members, obviously, to look at the best option for the building. It is certainly our intention to ensure that it is used for the best purposes for the community going forward.
Supplementary, Councillor McGuinn.
These council services and voluntary groups are doing great work down there. Will this work continue? I know we've got budget problems, but how long can this continue?
Councillor Davis.
Confer, aren't we, in that sense?
Yeah.
Yes, is that okay? Okay. I haven't rung a friend or anything. That isn't, as you know, Bernard, doesn't sit within my portfolio, and that would be funded through the primary care network, I would imagine. But again, certainly can find out details for you on that. But at this point, I haven't got any details on that. So we'll get back to you and let you know exactly what's happening with that as well. Okay?
Thank you. Question 4, Councillor Davis.
Are being shared more widely, can you please share the plans for the collections currently housed and displayed at the Tulsa Museum?
Thank you very much, Mr Deputy Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Davis, for your question. I believe this is the same question that I got at the last council, so I'm afraid you are going to get a very similar answer. It would be right for me to say something different at the next. Once the new museum in the Cultural Heart is ready for the fit-out, the collections currently housed and displayed at the Tulsa Museum will transfer to the new museum. They'll be used to tell the stories of Huddersfield and surrounding areas, the places, the people, the businesses, and our significant events. The collections will continue to be catered for and managed in line with the Arts Council England Museum accreditation, so that Kirklees Museums and Galleries continues to maintain its accreditation, which is important when seeking funds and loans.
Thank you. Supplementary, Councillor Davis.
It was the same question. It's not necessarily the same answer that you gave me as last time, because the answer I was given last time was that no decision would be made until there was some consultation with the public. And that was the answer that I was given in this chamber. Yet it wasn't until less than a week later a council officer stated in a meeting that the collections would be moving. I just want you to clarify which of those answers is actually correct and who's making the decisions, please.
Yep, no, thank you very much. Sorry, there must have been some misunderstanding when I gave that previously, because I thought the situation around decisions about the future use of Tolson. The collections, of course, are in line with what I've said there, and I believe I have said previously, but I apologise for any miscommunication and any misunderstanding, but I can confirm that the answer I've given is the answer.
Yes, it is.
Councillor Andrew Pinnock.
Can the Cabinet member please tell me what is the target length of time for the processing of blue badge applications?
Yep, thanks for that question, Councillor Pinnock. So we have 3 types of application. And within Kirklees, we set our own internal targets, processing times, and these depend on the application. So just to run through those, a type 1 takes 48 hours, and then that runs right through to type 3, which takes 12 weeks. And then, obviously, in the middle of that, type 2 takes between 4 to 8 weeks. So that's 1, 48 hours, type 2, 4 to 8 weeks, and type 3, 12 weeks.
Supplementary, Councillor Pinnock.
Thank you very much for that answer. Perhaps some explanation will be required for the email that I had some weeks ago, which implied that through no fault of his own on behalf of his mother, this person had been waiting 6 months for an application to be processed, and as a result, his mother was more or less housebound because no provision can be made, apparently, for temporary blue badges to cover this sort of issue. And I would be very grateful if the government member can tell me if this situation is going to get resolved anytime soon, please.
I'd be very happy to look at that individual case, so I can't comment on it. I don't know the full background. I don't know the various issues around that. And I've dealt with and picked up a number of cases which have, unfortunately taken longer than they should have. At the moment, although I referred to our set targets, at the moment, the type 3, which is the complex processing, the average is around 18 weeks. And obviously we're working on reducing that. So there has been additional resource input in there, but even that additional resource is not effective immediately because it's quite complex and the training is in place. And you're probably aware there are issues with the DWP as well in terms of the PIPs, and that's been impacting this. And in some cases, PIPs are only being awarded for a short period, a small number of months, and that's caused confusion. But I'd be very happy, just send me those details. I'll follow up on them immediately, and we'll see what we can do to resolve that particular issue. And, it certainly doesn't sound good from what you said, but again, I don't know the overall issues that are impacting that.
Supplementary, Councillor Pinnock. Question, I was trying to sneak in another one. Question 6, Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. In May, your administration replaced the place partnerships with primary care network leads. How do you feel this is working?
Taylor, what I will do is I'll pass this question on to my cabinet member who's responsible for this area of work, Councillor Musrat Khan. Moves over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Councillor Taylor. All 9 of the PCNs have identified elected members, member leads who have been meeting with the PCNs and developing relationships with them. The roles are intended to help the health and care system think about how to move away from a one-size-fits-all approach and to, as happened in the pandemic, draw on a wider range of experience and tailor their approach to circumstances of different parts of Kirklees. It's a form of place-based working. The role description was kept intentionally broad to enable each elected member to adapt the role to circumstances of their local area and for them to develop the role over time rather than take a prescriptive approach to it. So it's very different from usual SRs, and we are working with external partners. The role description, and as is usually the case with new roles and relationships, things take a while to become embedded. Each role has had a different experience, with some able to build on existing relationships, whereas others have had to start from scratch. Each PCN is also different, and the experiences of each of the 9 councillors often reflects the experiences of other partners such as Locala. The initial approach has been to ask elected members to build relationships, join the PCN meeting, and this has been successful for some but not all. Where it is working, elected members are continuing that approach, and where it's not, they are developing relationships outside of the formal meeting structure. And just to give some wider context to how we came about this, in November 2021, the Chief Executive of the NHS asked Dr Claire Fuller to undertake a stock take of progress towards integration within the NHS. The result of this work is the Fuller stock take, which makes it clear that partnership working at a neighbourhood level is the direction of travel for the primary care networks, and there will be a role for elected members in delivering that.
Thank you. Supplementary, Councillor Taylor.
So part of the reason for asking this question was I'm a member of Corporate Governance and Audit, and it was agreed when the role was first approved that a report would be brought back to corporate governance and audit after 6 months. That 6-month period has gone and nothing has been done. So I'm a little concerned that we haven't met the requirements of corporate governance and audit, and nobody said anything, and there's been no sharing of information with the members of corporate governance and audit. And I was wondering why that was, and I wonder if you could explain why you haven't brought the report forward that you should have done after 6 months. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Question 7, Councillor Taylor.
Recently, the Q2 financial report, monitoring report indicated in-year pressure of circa 34 million, caused by a variety of global and national factors. Quite rightly, in response, the Council announced that it would be undertaking a series of actions to mitigate against the impact of these cost increases. Could the Leader indicate what actions have been completed and what the expected impact of the changes achieved to date are expected to be?
Councillor Taylor. Mr. Mayor, Deputy Mayor, what I will do is I'll try and provide a summary of what we're doing, and then I might need to bring my Cabinet Member, Councillor Paul Davis, in, if time permits. Firstly, there are immediate actions that have been taken on the back of the major financial challenges we face. As you'll know, we are stopping all recruitment, and each recruitment process that takes place will need to have a robust case to make sure that we are recruiting the right people in the right place, and there's a process for doing that. We also carried out a complete asset review along with our partners to make sure that we actually look at every single building. There's also a cost reduction exercise that are taking place. For example, any agency spending, we are halting. We are reviewing the capital plan, and we are also looking at how we utilise our reserves in an efficient and prudent manner. Prior to the announcement the government made, the LGA on a cross-party basis did a number of actions because council tax by itself is not a solution, and we had to put a solid case to government. 14th of October 2022, on a cross-party basis, all the leaders of the LGA jointly wrote to the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and the Chancellor Jeremy Hunt to put our case forward. We've also launched a campaign around Save Local Services, which has identified around 800 services local government delivers. And the case is very, very clear, Mr. Deputy Mayor. A long-term settlement is needed, now more so than ever. The LGA submission to inform government fiscal plan was also submitted, and the kind of thing we talked about was, after a decade of cuts from 2010 to 2020, local government has lost £15 billion from its baseline budgets. That's across all local authorities. At the same time, what we did was we actually submitted a proposal which identified an in-year gap of £2.4 billion. And for us, that was £34 million at that moment in time. That was based on an 8% inflation increase. And as we know, the inflation rate is now around 11%. So the figure has already inflated. Next year, it's going to be £3.4 billion deficit for local government, and the year after, 24-25, £4.5 billion. On top of that, Mr. Deputy Mayor, adult social care seeking process solution is now wearing very thin. We've got a £6.5 billion deficit to make sure that we just keep our services at standstill. Bearing in mind, we've got massive cost pressures on top of massive demand pressures. Children's services in the last 5 years, Mr. Deputy Mayor, has had a cost pressure increase of 25%. That is a massive increase that we are seeing go up year on year. Just to maintain children's services at the level it is at the moment, we'll need an additional £1.6 billion. That is quite worrying when there's no more money. What I will do now, Mr. Deputy Mayor, is if there is anything else to add, Paul, can I ask you to
be brief. I think you've covered some of the key areas. Certainly, all the actions we identified have been, last month have been put in place, and we're moving forward with recruitment freeze, as I said, review of council buildings, and reductions in other expenses. And I think we're all aware, and it'll be noted from the Q2 report, that we expect these actions to achieve 4 million savings in year. This will go alongside other action we've been taking, such as reviewing the capital programme and, of course, deploying our reserves. And again, the fact that we, at this point, have sufficient reserves is a testament to this administration holding firm, certainly in recent years, and not spending those reserves on other areas that we did not need to do at that particular point. Certainly, we're in a position where the government delayed or delivered its autumn statement. That statement was very clear that there would be no additional support coming to us as local authorities. And as the leaders outlined, that is putting huge pressures on all authorities, including ourselves, and unfortunately is pushing us into tough decisions for years to come. We've been completely open about the major financial challenge, and we'll continue to take actions on staffing, buildings and investment to do all we can to mitigate the issues that we're facing.
Thank you. Supplementary, Councillor Taylor.
Thank you for the extensive response, but I don't think you've actually answered the question. We indicated there's been discussions with leaders of the various parties about some proposals that were coming forward, including closing buildings. I'm not aware those buildings yet have closed, and of course, the longer we take before we take the actions, the more money that's burning. I know they're unpalatable decisions. I appreciate that. I think we all appreciate that. This isn't something that we as a council have on our own. It's something that is shared across the country. But the longer we take to take the decisions, the more money that is burning, and therefore the bigger problem that we're creating for ourselves. So I don't get a sense of the urgency that we certainly had when we were dealing with the pandemic, where the council came together and we worked collectively to solve problems. I don't see that same, and I'd like to see some more urgency from the administration taking the decisions that need to be taken so that we're not going to solve the problem, but at least we can minimise the impact. But we're not doing that at the moment. The decisions that were being taken need to be taken and actions put in place. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Certainly can assure Councillor Taylor that action is being taken with the greatest urgency possible. And I think that's evident to everybody in this chamber who's listened to the feedback that we've given on our finances and the feedback on our action plans. In terms of assets and buildings, that review is due in January, and therefore we'll be taking decisions based on that review in January. There is constant review of this. Certainly it is something, and I'm just looking at the Chief Exec, who's, I'm sure having many sleepless nights on this one, because this is constant review on a weekly basis with our executive team, and of course with myself as a portfolio holder, again, that same engagement. And also, as a cabinet, we are having increasingly now more frequent discussions around the progress and how we're moving forward and the issues we're facing. So there is absolute urgency. If there wasn't, we'd be sitting back saying very little and not sharing that much. So certainly you can take it from me that nobody is sitting back, nobody's complacent, and in fact we're determined to meet the challenges that we have got. And if unfortunately there are really tough decisions, they'll be taken in a measured and proper way.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Before we close, may I take the opportunity to thank you all for your attendance, your contributions, to wish you all a happy Christmas and a peaceful Christmas, as we will not all meet together as a group in this chamber. And also, who knows, for Christmas, it may well be coming home. Thank you.